All right, there we go. Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I am here with Bold Like a Leopard and MythicArjuna once again, and we are having a few different topics we're going to be talking about today. For starters, we're going to be discussing a little bit about the Mattis file, which Bold has been been following this story for some months now, and just recently I helped him with an undercover phone call to John Mattis as we were trying to expose the fake news story that was picked up by Huffington Post, TYT, and Rachel Maddow, which was discussing about how there was Russian influence inside of Bernie Sanders' Facebook group. So Bold has been following this story for some time. He has already talked to a few different people that were involved in the server, and he's even talked to someone who is administration of that Facebook group who is refuting a lot of what John Mattis is saying on the story. So, Bold, would you like to start off by just giving us a quick fill-in of everything that was just sort of the overview of the story?
Yeah, what happened is that it appears as if one of the people who claimed to be a volunteer for Bernie Sanders' campaign in San Diego during the 2016 election was acting on behalf of other parties. It looks, our suspicion is it was American Bridge 21st Century, which I'll pull up their website in a second. But that is a super PAC. It's affiliated with David Brock, who is actually a well-known. He used to be a journalist for the American Spectator, which was a right-wing publication, and later in the 90s, like the late 90s, David Brock switched sides and he became. This is their website, American Bridge 21st Century. And basically they are a PAC that he formed among other ones in order to basically provide opposition research and all sorts of other attack material against GOP candidates, which is fine. But what they did in this case had nothing to do with the GOP. They were actually acting on behalf of Hillary Clinton in order to corral former supporters of Bernie Sanders after the primary and get them to continue to vote for Hillary Clinton in the 2016 general election. Now, we're not talking about anything illegal. We're not talking about anything, so far as I know. But what we are talking about is basically a person who helped concoct a lot of stories about Bernie Sanders groups being infiltrated and duped by Russian moles or actually like Russian sock accounts on Facebook in order to persuade them to continue voting against Hillary Clinton in whatever way possible. And the way that I uncovered this was from an article I did in the Hard News Network. You can find them hardnews.network. And let me see if I can get this.
And just to be clear, just because we are researching the story, this does not make us Bernie Sanders fans. In fact, Bold said it awesomely on his stream. It was really funny. You said if Bernie Sanders was drowning, I'd throw him a bottle of water.
Yeah, and like I make a distinction between and I'm not even laughing when I say that. I think he's all around. I as a person, I think he's not the benign, cherubic angel that people portray him to be. But he's an elected senator. Honestly, in that situation, if there were people watching, yes, I probably would have saved him from drowning. But the truth of the matter is that I think he is kind of deceiving even people on the left who believe he has the interests of the common good in mind. I think in many cases he has sold them out by supporting Hillary Clinton. So this was a story that I wrote in February, and it actually mentions, I call it Bernie's jelly vertebrae. When it comes to, he just has no spine when it comes to being attacked. He was attacked by Politico in February it was a smear attack. It was wrong for them to attack Bernie Sanders. And they were trying, remember, I would not have actually published this story because I wasn't looking to find anything, clearing Bernie Sanders of anything. I wasn't even convinced that at first that there was a problem with the story. But what happened was there were indictments of 13 Russian nationals involved in a troll farm. And Politico, they have this reporter named Edward Isaac Dever, who published 3 articles in quick succession claiming that the Sanders campaign had been compromised. Here's the first one. You see the classic Bernie. Well, you don't see it because I had stopped sharing the screen, but hold on. So you see him with the classic stone face, and it said he's silent on the claim that Russians backed him in 2016. Well, they didn't back him. The story is about things that happened after he backed out of the election. So it's not Bernie Sanders' responsibility for that. Bernie Sanders isn't responsible for everything that happens on his supporter pages. Just like we have we have streams and comment sections afterwards. Does anybody hold it against you, Jim, so that somebody will comment something on a video of yours and they'll say, oh, something inappropriate happened, or you have Russian trolls on your comment stream? That's not your responsibility. It's actually YouTube's.
We can't control who's going to come and watch our videos or who's going to be on certain servers or certain groups. So the idea that the person holds responsibility is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, even if it just happens to be that somebody comes in to troll the group, if it happens to be, say, an alt-righter coming on a Jewish stream, then the person who's hosting that stream can't be held accountable for that person. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, this is a platform where you have to expect that once in a while, or even very frequently, if you have a high profile, as Bernie Sanders did, that you would get some people that are not they're not above board. So this was his statement in response to that accusation, and he said, he said a very clear statement. Let there be no confusion about my view. What the Russians did in the 2016 election cycle deserves unconditional condemnation. That includes, but by the way, I don't even believe that story anyway. So he did this in order to, this is basically him saying, I don't have anything to do with whatever crap you're making up. So that includes all of their conduct, whether it was active support of any candidate or active opposition to any candidate, or the decision to not go after a candidate as a way of hurting or helping another campaign. This is true of any of the 2016 campaigns, including those of Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton, Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, or my own. As someone who campaigned hard for Secretary Clinton from one end of the country to another, it is an outrage that she had to run against not only Donald Trump, but also the Russian government. Also, Americans rightly expected and deserved a fair election free of foreign governmental intervention. The key issues now are how we prevent the unwitting manipulation of the electoral and political system of our country by foreign governments, and exposing who was actively consorting with the Russian government's attack on our democracy. Now, the thing is that he had said previously that one of his campaign workers had helped report the information to the government, and that was from this NBC7 San Diego report with John Mattis. This is John Mattis here, and he will talk to any camera, say anything to anyone in order to get attention. This John Mattis. So he said, they would misspell where they're living in the United States, or they would have no profile at all. They were just ghosts. But that's the way it is on Facebook. There's a lot of Facebook accounts. If you take a random article from The Hill, I can show it to you later, but I don't want to keep hogging the stream. There are tons of accounts where there's no profile pic. It has a name like Naughtius Maximus or something. People do that on Facebook, and I've done it, and that's not illegal. There's nothing you can do about it. That's the way it works. And he apparently has this opinion where he thinks that that the internet is some sort of basically a civil society. It's not. So after that first piece, the Politico attacked him again. It said, well, this is the first one. Bernie blames Hillary for allowing Russian interference, but the thing is, the person who reported that he had informed the Hillary Clinton campaign was saying so himself. He was saying, "Oh, I reported it to them, and that is John Mattis over here. This is February 24th, 3 days after the story where Politico claimed that Sanders was deflecting." And it says here, I highlighted it about a month ago. He said he never talked to anyone on the Clinton campaign itself, though he believed that the researcher he spoke with at the pro-Clinton American Bridge PAC run by David Brock was tantamount to reaching the campaign. So this John Mattis, who is, by the way, an attorney and an investigative journalist himself, self-professed, and he has done investigative journalism, he was claiming that by informing a super PAC, he was informing the Hillary Clinton campaign. Well, that's illegal by federal law for a super PAC to contact an actual candidate's campaign. So he had to have known that it's not the same thing. So it says, David Brock was all I knew of the campaign, Mattis said. What the hell does that even mean? No one at American Bridge said, call up Hillary, call up John Podesta or anybody. If they weren't sharing it with Hillary, that is their responsibility. That's ridiculous. I even highlighted this in orange. It said Mattis is adamant that anyone who claims that American Bridge was not tantamount to the Clinton campaign is being naive, though campaign finance laws prohibit interaction between entities such as those. And this should have been in super bold, italic, jazzy font, because that is the key here. This guy has been on several different media outlets, and he doesn't understand the difference between a super PAC and an actual campaign. So that was the red flag that started it all.
And you've done some good work so far in everything that you've done between the streams you've done. Jim, you'd ended up doing the stream with two of the Bernie crats, Jim and Julie, or Juliet. I can't remember.
Josephine. Yes.
Josephine, that was it. Yes. Yeah. And they did a great job at sort of exposing some of the lies that were put in there. And then just the other day when you and I were on your stream talking about this, we ended up also having, it was an administrator, Krista, I believe it was. Crystal, that's right. Oh man, I'm bad with names. She ended up coming on and she was talking about just how John Mattis was full of crap, how everything that he was talking about, she wasn't seeing any of this. And for him, one of the big things that when I was talking to him, it seemed that he was using as an example for, well, these are Russian trolls that were involved. Like he was saying that it was going back, like he could trace their IP addresses back to like Eastern Europe and Macedonia. But the main thing had to do with crap. Sorry, again, it's my bad memory acting up. I got off subject for a second. But it had to do with talking about yeah, that's my bad memory. Sorry guys, I lost my train of thought. This would be the point where your chat would be calling me out for being high again.
Well, I mean, we're in the no judgment zone because John Mattis himself isn't on. And he actually can't. He can only wag his finger at me because I'm the only American here for not voting for Hillary Clinton. That was what he said to you on that phone call. He said that anybody who voted third party was basically to blame for the situation our country is in today. But to keep, I just wanted to put like a comma there before I kept going. So you're correct. Once I published that first article and this is by me, Razor Ray McCoy and the Hard News Network. And, if you want, I can send it to you. You can share it in the chat or something.
Yeah, it sounds good. Send it to me, and then I'll put that in. And yeah, I do remember what I was going to say now. Now I got my notepad, so I won't forget anymore. I'll write down if I'm starting to forget. But it had to do with the fact that he was trying to claim that there was a bunch of anti-Hillary messages and anti-Hillary articles that were coming into this Facebook group, and for that reason, it had to mean that these were Russian trolls involved. But there were plenty of Bernie supporters that were against Hillary Clinton. They saw her as just part of the main problem, part of the corporate Democrats. So that way, it makes perfect sense to me that there'd be a lot of anti-Hillary messaging that's going on inside of the Facebook group.
Right. So coming off of that first article that I wrote, I did end up watching a segment on the Rachel Maddow show from, I believe it was March 23rd, 2017. And she basically, in that segment, Rachel Maddow basically splashed the names of several of these people on screen, including 4 people that I've actually reached who, they weren't explicitly called Russian trolls, but their names appeared on screen in a segment that talks about Russian trolls infiltrating the Bernie Sanders campaign. Let me see if I can find the actual article or the broadcast itself. I can at least show you the still frames of their names on screen.
Sounds
Hey,
good.
Bold,
Yeah.
just to cut in here for 1 second, let me just ask, did somebody in Mueller's camp, or was it Mueller himself? I don't remember exactly right now. Did somebody just say that they have no case against Trump or something like that? Something like that came up recently.
There were a number of indications, like several times, claiming that, for example, there has been testimony on Capitol Hill where investigators have admitted, like upfront, that Donald Trump is not under investigation, that he's not a target of the investigation, and that in reality, the people that are being investigated, that they can't be even construed to having, like Donald Trump. Essentially, the investigation, the Democrats are pinning to it the hope that it will implicate Donald Trump himself in criminal activity. Now, what you're thinking of is that last week they admitted that Justice Department guidelines say that they cannot indict the president if he's sitting in office. So even if they did have proof of criminal activity, they can't indict him. They need Congress to impeach him first. So the House would have to impeach him with a majority, and then the Senate would have to have 2/3 of the members vote to remove him from office, and then they could indict him. So the Mueller investigation can keep going, and it can reach a conclusion. And even if they had they could issue a declaration, we found, X, Y, and Z that Trump did. If so long as the Republicans hold Congress and they're not willing to vote to impeach him, and then so the Senate to remove him from office, it's basically, they can wipe their ass with whatever they put out. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing is too is right now is that it's pretty clear that that's exactly, you're saying that they can't indict the president. It's very clear that this is the next plan for the Democrats is exactly impeaching Trump. They've already stated that if they take back the House come the 2018 midterm elections, that they're going to try and impeach Trump. But none of these people seem to think through it. I mean, let's just say for sake of argument that Trump got impeached. Who comes next? Mike Pence. They don't like Mike Pence anymore. So what, are they going to then try and impeach Mike Pence? I mean, the Democrats are doing more and more to try and undermine your democratic process than the Republicans are. Actually, I would say than a lot of other parties in other countries are right now. It's actually amazing that this is even allowed.
Yeah, this is, if you talk to people on the progressive left, and, there are people on it that, I talk to them, and, they're more reasonable than people who are, diehard Democrats. They're all seeing, and they've been saying for a while, that the Democratic Party doesn't even have a real vision. They're basically a corporate branch of whatever lobbying groups are influencing Congress and have polluted the democracy. You have, at the same time that they're talking about this phantom impeachment method, there's the Alwan brothers scandal, which, not to go down a rabbit hole, maybe we can go into it later with Arjun if he's interested. With this Pakistani family infiltrated most or a large portion of the Democratic caucus in Congress, and they committed several illegal acts, including running basically a money laundering operation out of a car dealership. and you know, they stole classified information and shared it basically with the Pakistani government. So that they don't want to focus on at all. They don't want anybody to talk about it in the press, but they do want to talk about, you know, Stormy Daniels taking $130,000 in hush money for sleeping with Trump in 2006.
Share this article on the chat. Share this article on the chat. I want to read that article. The Pakistani family.
Oh, that one?
Yeah.
Let me see here. So this one is, yeah, here's one from April 3rd, but there's a lot of it is from the Daily Caller. So if you look up Daily Caller or Owan Brothers, then you know, they have a lot of material on it. But back to the Mattis file. So the reason I was able to get anybody, you know, to go further was because of Rachel Maddow. And here I'm sharing the screen if you guys want to take a look. She actually did not blur out the names of actual Bernie Sanders supporter. This is the name of a Bernie Sanders supporter here. Let me see.
Is it the Imran Awan file?
Imran Awan, yes, that's correct. You can see, 1 second. I think the 11:30 mark was where he said. Yeah, this is a guy, Jim, who was on my channel, and Josephine. So the implication here, because I mean, these are crudely written Facebook posts, the implication is that this is a foreign bot. But no, a lot of people who write on Facebook, they'll write something that's, you know, very fast and simple. And, you know, he's talking about George Soros feeding money to Priorities USA, which feeds money to Indivisible. But this is from March 19th of 2017. Okay, this has nothing to do with the election. Nothing to do with the election. Indivisible was formed after the election. It has nothing. This is. I'm looking at it right now. I didn't notice that part. This is talking about Indivisible, which is a group that opposes Donald Trump, but Indivisible only formed after the 2016 election. So they're featuring a post about somebody who is a real flesh and blood person, a real Bernie Sanders supporter, who after the election is claiming, you know, the Indivisible, which is a movement that John Mattis is a part of, is funded by George Soros. Well, they are funded by George Soros. So where's the fake news there? Where's the foreign trolling? This is a person who said something that's true. So getting back to the sequence, I reached out to Josephine and Jim, and they were, you know, they were crestfallen over the fact that, you know, they'd been featured on the news, and you know, John Mattis was getting all this attention, and they were willing to talk to me on my YouTube channel, and you know, we've had 2 live streams with them so far. You know, very, very nice people in the San Diego area. Jim is a Navy veteran from I think the 1980s. He said he served. So John Mattis essentially has concocted this whole story out of thin air. These people, they assert they were Democratic National Convention delegates in 2016. They went to the convention. They were abused at the convention in terms of, you know, being shoved around and bullied by the ushers and things like that. And they were never, ever involved in anything Russian. The administrator of the group, Crystal Coleman, she's written to me emails. She came on to the channel, what was it, 2 days ago, and said publicly that there was no Russian infiltration of her group. And this is the only group that John Mattis has actually produced anything, any visual evidence of anything that he's talking about, and it doesn't show anything. This post, for example, which appeared on Rachel Maddow's show, has nothing to do with the election. Indivisible started after the election. I can prove it to you. Okay, you look at Indivisible movement. It says launched after Donald Trump's election. The indivisible became a nationwide movement. So how can Jim Boydston become retroactively a Russian troll based on something that happened after the election? So he affected. I mean, do you understand the chronological sequence makes absolutely no sense. They feature a post of his that happens 4 months after the election, splashing his name across the internet, and anybody could have reached out and asked him, what's your response to this? And I did. And more people should. More people should reach out to him and ask him the real story, because this is a real person. And just because he supports Bernie Sanders, who, we've already said what I think of Bernie Sanders, but it does not imbue people with the right to judge this person as a Russian troll or a traitor to the Republic.
Well, I think, and this is also going back, I think, to showing some of the lack of morals or ethics that might be inside the Democratic Party, is that when they were talking about someone like Jim, who you were talking about, he was a veteran of the Navy. Well, then how could they possibly say that he is a traitor to the Republic, or how could they treat him that way when he's actually served his time for his country? And he's, I'm sure he's made lots of sacrifices in order to do that. And just listening to this whole thing too, and just everything that's gone on is, I can't believe that we're at a point where people on YouTube seem to have a better sense of morality than a lot of these other journalists, because like the Maddow, not article, the video you just showed, they were talking about how they weren't covering up any of these people's names. Well, they're literally doxing these people. But this is something, when we're talking about online culture, is seen as a big taboo. You don't dox people, and people who do dox, they're given a lot of shit for doing something like that. It's seen as a terrible thing to do. It could be dangerous too, because if you dox somebody and there's somebody who wants to get to them, then you've just given them all the information necessary to do that. But I think a lot of the when we're looking at who pushed this story, it tells a lot about it too, because we have Rachel Maddow, who I've never really liked Rachel Maddow or watched Rachel Maddow, but I know some people in the past have said that at one point she was at least not a bad journalist. I don't know if that's true or not, but I've heard that. But then the other ones that were pushing this story was Huffington Post, which my buddy who went and actually did a political science class, his professor full out told him, he's like, don't use Huffington Post. They're no better than a blog. They're not to be trusted. So he was full out told that when doing research, you don't use Huffington Post, or he would actually lose marks on whatever he was presenting. And then we also have the Young Turks. The Young Turks have had a bad rap sheet, especially as of late. The Young Turks have, despite the fact they have something like millions of people who subscribe to them, I think there are something like 3 million people at the moment, like half of their audience now just trolls them online. Like they're not a reputable news source at all.
Yeah, I think
you're having a reasonable discussion. You're trying to have a reasonable discussion. Come on.
Of course.
Of course.
Or my favorite one is, no, it's nuanced, guys. You just don't understand. It's nuanced. Everything is nuanced. Google it.
or when he says, this is what happens when you have people who are uneducated commenting on things that they don't know anything about. That's what Cenk always says. So, in response to that, I'll just say this. So I have a hard time discounting an entire news source. The one news source I always say is the worst of all of them, in my opinion, is Rolling Stone. Huffington Post has a lot of stuff that is purely blogs. So it is blogs. They do have some journalism. So I'm not doing this in order to, it's not like I like the Huffington Post, but this isn't to attack them specifically and tell people not to read it, because I do read journalistic sources that I am critical of, because I need it in order to, the Middle East Monitor, for example, is an openly pro-Hamas publication, and fine, I'll read their stuff and I'll critique it, and they do present stuff, I mean, yes, they do lie, but they also present stuff from a certain angle. But there's also Jewish publications or Israeli publications that do the same thing, and they provide a slant. So that does not make them an illegitimate news source. If we're getting back to the Huffington Post. But the issue here is that I believe that Ryan Grimm, and I have my second article up, which I did after talking to Jim and Joe, that I went through Mattis's entire every single article that he posted on his own website, and this is a person who he hoodwinked Ryan Grimm, who is from TYT, and he used to be at Huffington Post. So he now works at The Intercept. So the Huffington Post can't be blamed for this anymore because he doesn't work there anymore. He can't be punished for this because he did this at his former newspaper, so or whatever, online news source. So I go through Mattis's own personal history in painful detail here. So this is a second link. I'll just send it to you. I know I'm kind of giving people a lot of reading homework for the weekend, and they're probably going to hate me because they might have just gotten off of school. But the fact of the matter is that if you go through Mattis's entire history, there's a person who was a Wisconsin politician in the 1970s. He was on city council in Madison, Wisconsin, which is where the flagship campus of the University of Wisconsin is. So he was going to school there. He was taking his master's degree in communications. He was also, at the same time, he was on the Dane County Board of Supervisors, which is the county where the college is. His thesis was entitled Enhancing the Persuasiveness of Television Advertisements via the Transfer of Residual Arousal from Prior Programming. So he has something to say, something to contribute in the field of ideological or commercial propaganda. This is a person who has experience in it, at least academically. And what he has been doing is basically layering it all in order to get people to believe in this whole concocted tale of people infiltrating Josephine and Crystal's group and Jim and a number of other people. And he went first to BuzzFeed. I do credit BuzzFeed, and people beat up on BuzzFeed, but they did say that as of now, this is November 8th, 2016. What day was that, guys?
What was the date again?
November 8th, 2016.
Wasn't that election?
So on the day of the election, BuzzFeed published this story, which is slightly inflammatory, claiming that there was Russian influence. But they said, but as of now, neither Mattis nor BuzzFeed News have unearthed any evidence that links the spammers to a coordinated campaign to suppress Clinton votes. So BuzzFeed never pursued it again. What?
Yeah, but why are they printing it, right? Why are they printing it? It's obviously, obviously they are trying to push a certain thing.
Right. They basically say, oh, there's these rumors that we see, and we just want you to know that there are these rumors of things that we think are happening, but we don't have evidence.
That's how journalists do it. That's how journalists do it, right? That in the guise of garb of being neutral, when they have to push a certain slant, that's how they do it.
So then I go through all of his articles, and he has articles, for example, from Inquisitor, which is, it's not the worst of the worst, but it's not a great publication. And then there's Exit from Albania, which is just a translated news aggregator. These are articles he's sharing on his site. This is somebody criticizing other people for sharing unreliable foreign news sources, and he's featuring Exit, which is they just translate our Albanian articles to English and they feature it. Another one, Raw Story. Another one, Daily Coast Blogs. So this is a person who lopped off the first two paragraphs of Ryan Grimm's story and posted it on the Daily Coast Blogs, and John Mattis considers that a news source. This is a person who Rachel Maddow uses as a resource to talk about Facebook fake news infiltration by Russia. Then there's actually a nice stream with Vermont Public Radio, if you're into that type of thing. I personally think public radio is kind of boring, but
I was going to say that sounds like the stereotypical like monotone person talking where you can't stay awake.
I did listen to the podcast of it, and it wasn't bad, but it was full of the same inaccurate garbage. So it wasn't like it was boring like most public radio is, but it's like it's the same thing, and they were buying it hook, line, and sinker. Then there was the Rachel Maddow show, San Diego Free Press, which is basically like a local sheet that they would put you know, you find like stuck in your fence. If you go out, somebody stuck a newspaper in your fence. Hey, read this. You know, come see my. You know, by the way, come visit my strip club on Tuesday. We have free wings and shrimp. You know, that type of place. That's the journalism. You know, not to say there's anything wrong with this, but these are the publications he's featuring, or that there are the ones that are hosting his stuff. The OB Rack from Ocean Beach, which is another one similar to San Diego Free Press. Times of San Diego, which is a local paper, which is actually, you know, that's a good source technically. It's local news. East County Magazine. Political Haze, which is fake news, doesn't exist. Does not exist.
Really?
Yeah, it has a Facebook page, but the actual newspaper does not exist. Then there's Huffington Post, U.S. News and World Report, reputable publication. They featured this information with him, and they didn't quote him directly, but they used his quotes from other publications. So other people, this is how an echo chamber develops. They magnify a story made up by some asshole somewhere in the middle of San Diego, that's to the detriment of the other people of San Diego, the honest voters who said, you know, we're going to vote for whoever we want. They didn't ask them. By the way, those people tried to clear the story. Nobody responded to their attempts to clear their names. Then there was the Guardian and Raw story. The Guardian, of course, is a huge newspaper over in Manchester, England, that's read around the world. Then there's uzoj.com, another French language website that the link is dead, so it doesn't exist there anymore. And the rest of the articles there are on technology and health. One of them is for treatments for blackheads, for those of you that are, you know, 17 and under. And another one is a review of a Samsung 360 round camera. Reverb Press, which is kind of a weird one. I think that they're kind of a very, very partisan, like, blog website more. So, you know, I mean, he can feature whoever he wants on his website, but he can't call himself a reputable news source if this is who he's using as his big, you know, titans of media. Then there's Rejuvenation Media, another like holistic website. And then my favorite one, personally, this guy blocked me on Twitter, thelastmenandovermen.com, who is he actually ran for this is a guy. Let me see if I can get his photo. The fuck? Yeah, you go for about him, about Mike, it goes to, oh, here we go. It's this guy. See him? So
Mike Sachs?
Yeah, he's running for Congress, and I think
Mike Sachs.
Yeah, the guy looks basically like a wrestler from the 80s. You know, Snuka, whatever his name was. I'm not a big wrestling aficionado, but you know what I'm talking about. This guy, he wrote this article that you know, he calls it says, what's striking are the comments of John Mattis, who was helping run Bernie's outline campaign. What's an outline campaign, guys? I don't know. Could he have meant online? Could it be that this guy is technologically illiterate, like John Mattis?
I was going to say, we've been running into a lot of those people during this story, haven't we?
Right.
They just might be phoning it in, bro. They might have outsourced their online operation to some African.
It's like what I like to analogize it to is there was an Ali G sketch where he got a bunch of business executives into a room and he said he had a new invention, and he's like, yeah, it's a hoverboard, and he just had like a skateboard without wheels and he threw it across the room, and they're like, where's the hoverboard? He's like, I think of the concept, you do the technology. so that's, you know, you do the details. That's the way that they treat the actual story. They don't actually have the real proof of anything going on. It says, so he quotes him, a huge wave of fake news stories originating from Eastern Europe began washing over the presidential election months earlier, at the height of the primary campaign. John Mattis, who was helping run the outline campaign for the Democratic candidate Bernie Sanders from San Diego, said it really took off in March 2016. So I don't know where he's quoting this from. You know, I don't know if he even talked to John Mattis. So it says more Mattis. So this is, by the way, this is like awfully written. So like he puts the quotes after the actual, you know, the end of the quote, like way after. Then he says Mattis believes that the aim of the campaign was to damage Clinton, who Vladimir Putin saw as his arch foe, and then after the primaries were over, to minimize the number of Sanders voters who switched their support to Clinton in the face-off against Trump. He was writing in real time about things I was seeing happening in August, but I couldn't articulate it until September. He said, because the Sanders campaign was so open, democratic, and relatively unregulated. Mattis says he now realizes we basically set ourselves to be victims of an international cyber warfare campaign. We were pawns in this, but very effective pawns. Then Mike Sachs just repeats this. Like he writes the same thing again in a separate paragraph. You know, he says, wow, and then he just writes the same line. And then he says, yes, because Bernie supporters wanted to believe the worst about Hillary going in. This was a big key to the Trump campaign. Less a get out the vote effort than a don't get out the vote effort. So let me see here. Yeah, this is the type of crap that he features on his website. And then there's Newsweek and the New York Times, which both suck as well. So, you know, I went and I investigated all that stuff. I talked to those two people from San Diego, Joe and Jim, Josephine and Jim. And since then, I've been trying to get other commentators to talk about the story. And, you know, that phone call that you placed, was it last week or was it like Monday?
Something like that.
Yeah. So I asked Adrian, you know, would you be willing to do this in order at least we could get his side of the story? And we got really more than we bargained for, because essentially John Mattis, in that phone call, he admitted several things. First of all, he admitted that he believes that the U.S. media is being monitored by the government, right? So he doesn't believe in the First Amendment. He thinks the First Amendment is essentially, and the Fourth Amendment, by the way, which guards against illegal searches and seizures. So he believes that we have a controlled media and that it's a good thing. He believes that Facebook has to be regulated and that it has to screen for real accounts and fake accounts. So, you know, he can say that, but then Facebook cannot be a global company. It would mean that, you know, in certain parts of the world, like Indonesia, where, for example, they might not have the most effective system for registering citizens, you know, you'd be shit out of luck if you want to register for a Facebook account, which, you know, I guess that's the price to pay for John Mattis to know that, you know, people are not, like, Russia isn't hacking his election. Jesus. And the most important thing that Adrian got out of John Mattis was that he admitted that he was on a daily basis in contact with David Brock's organization, with a researcher that he said he reached out to. And you know, notice that he didn't stop after the election researching this. Remember the post that he brought up on the Rachel Maddow show, let me see if I still have it up, is from March 19th, 2017. Only a few days before he went on the Rachel Maddow show. It has nothing to do with the election. So he was working in order to report back to David Brock's organization or whoever he's working for. I suspect, you know, let's be cautious here. I suspect he could be working for a government agency as well, because he said he was in contact with the national security official. So he was spying on erstwhile colleagues of his in the Bernie Sanders campaign and feeding whoever was his handler information claiming that they were Russian dupes. That's a type of person that masquerades as a journalist nowadays.
Well, and that sort of idea that he may have been working for some governmental organization, actually, I find these days holds more merit than it would have just a few months ago, because we just found out that the FBI placed a mole inside the Trump campaign. So the idea that they would place it inside the Bernie Sanders campaign makes a lot of sense to me. And one thing that Mattis did say when I was talking to him, which I actually think may have been one of the most true things that he did say during that interview, was where he was talking about that the fact that Bernie Sanders was running as an independent, but he was running for the Democratic nominee. He said there was no way that they were going to allow us a fair shot at it. And I do think he's right when he said that, but he's also leaving a lot out when he's talking about that, because he at no point ever brought up about how Hillary Clinton was trying to was actively trying to suppress Bernie Sanders in every way, whether that was limiting the debates or getting fed questions. There was plenty of reasons to suspect that Hillary Clinton was trying to sabotage him at every single move. Plus, I think I may have mentioned it last time we were talking that also every single time they were in the same area, Hillary Clinton seemed to just schedule her rallies at about the same time that Bernie Sanders was, and it seems like they were trying to suck away any sort of support that they could for the Bernie Sanders campaign. Also, the other thing is, just the other day when I was kind of looking a little more into it, they were talking about some of the problems that they had at the polls on the day of the election. They were saying how in one area, I cannot for the life of me remember which area it was, but they were where it had a lot of Bernie Sanders supporters. It ended up being something, I think 84% of the people who voted for Bernie Sanders. There was a lot going on that was suspicious. Like the the polling booths kept getting pushed behind. Eventually, the inside got so packed that it became a fire hazard. So they escorted everyone outside. Then from there they had to wait another hour or two. People were coming by with excuses why they couldn't get the voting started sooner. And then it got to the point where people are getting so frustrated and thinking that something was going on that they ended up starting to record these individuals that were coming out who were working for the polling station. And that's when things got bad. They were refusing to say anything on the record. They were refusing to have themselves filmed while this was going on. And a lot of these people that were trying to film ended up getting kicked out of the polling station. So it seems pretty obvious to me that there's a lot of shady shit that was going on along the Hillary Clinton campaign. A few people that were there during that day were saying that they truly believe that if the polling was allowed to go along the way it was supposed to, that it would have been even more of a blowout for Bernie Sanders than it would have been for Hillary Clinton.
So are you talking about the California primary?
You know what? I think it was California, yeah.
So there were several ones where I think California, for example, California, New York, and Nevada were the states where there was the most contention over, the primary vote. Now, in that election, Hillary Clinton won 53% over Bernie Sanders with 46%. And from the accounts that I hear from Josephine, which I do take very seriously. There were a lot of people being turned away at the polls saying, "Oh, you're not registered for this precinct," or issues like that. And that's not my specialty. So hopefully one day maybe she'd be willing to go onto your stream and illustrate it more in depth concerning that issue. The fact of the matter is that in many of these states where Bernie Sanders won outright, they were ones that were not significant factors in the election, such as Wyoming, such as Kansas. But in the states where he had a winning, now the most significant states where he did beat her were the Midwest states like Michigan and Wisconsin, and I think in West Virginia. And that was really the key to legitimizing his campaign. Unfortunately, there are a lot of Sanders people, I think, that have this notion that he would have won had it been a fair election, and I think that's kind of an oversimplification. He was very, very poor at campaigning in the South, campaigning among some of those states like Georgia, where there were a lot of delegates in play. He admitted it. There were issues in states like New York where they did remove voters from the rolls. That it seems like it was outright manipulation to screw him. I still think that Hillary Clinton would have won the nomination, but this isn't about who would have won the nomination. It's about the trustworthiness of the electoral process itself. It's about the campaign issue that he ran on. This is really where we talk about the validity of the campaign process. The Democrats have for years complained about super PACs and getting money out of politics. And in some cases, it's justifiable. But on the one hand, you had a candidate, Bernie Sanders, who was willing to say, I will fall on the sword. I will not use super PACs. I'll do it all through crowdfunding and small donations. And what did Hillary Clinton do? She fully embraced the whole dark money super PAC thing, and through David Brock, through other super PACs, Rob Reiner's super PAC, what's it called? People for the American Way, MoveOn.org. They embraced it full-heartedly, and that's what won the election. It was the dirty side of politics that Bernie Sanders was campaigning against. The type that does get corporations undue influence in the political system as lobbyists. So in that sense, I think that even if the campaign had been run above board, Bernie Sanders might have still lost. But we'll never know. And unfortunately, I think the ship has sailed for him. Well, actually, fortunately for me, but unfortunately for him, the ship has sailed on Bernie Sanders.
He doesn't want to go to he doesn't want to let it go, though, because he's talking about even now going in for the 2020 election. But as far as I can tell, he has a good chance of dying in office if he did win in the 2020 election, because he's really old as it stands. Like, I don't even mean that as a joke, but I think statistically they're saying that somebody who was to somebody about his age, if by the time 2020 runs around, if he was to win, there's a damn good chance that maybe by year 2 or 3 he would actually die in office just from old age. And he doesn't look like he takes care of himself too well.
Yeah,
well, I think the age issue is it's not as bad as people make it sound. We do have people who are elected to high positions that are very old throughout the country. Senator Feinstein in California I think she's 83 years old now. But the real issue, I think, is that the well has been poisoned, and I don't think he can't put together what's fallen apart. His campaign in 2016, that was a magical moment. They're fighting each other now. All the people that were once Bernie people, there's the people who went and voted for Hillary anyway. There's the people who were the diehards. There's the people who have gone way, way far to the left and voted, and they would be willing to vote for other people. There's people who've gone and voted for Trump. So you can't put Humpty Dumpty back together again. Sorry, Arjun, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I wanted to say, even if Bernie did sort of win the nomination, I don't think he would have won in a head-to-head against Trump. He wouldn't have, because Trump, you can't see. First of all, you can't really hurl accusations and try to sully his image, because Trump doesn't care about his image as such. The other thing is, Bernie, in terms of basic economics, Bernie would have lost, because Trump would have murdered him on economic policies.
Right. That's another thing, that they assume that Bernie Sanders would have defeated Donald Trump, but they lack the thing is, they don't understand strategy. All they understand is polling numbers, and sometimes, they'll talk about income levels, the income inequality, stuff like that. Things that they don't understand the actual dynamics behind them. That's why they believe a lot in like static models of economic activity instead of dynamic ones, because they don't understand the way that businesses operate. They don't understand the way that, private enterprise and innovation happen. So in terms of would he have beaten Donald Trump in the race? Well, Donald Trump's strategy, if he would have come up against Bernie Sanders, would have been much, much different from his strategy against Hillary Clinton. And we know from, his time since coming into politics and, way before that Donald Trump is somebody who has a great emphasis on strategy. He is a strategic thinker, and Bernie Sanders is not a strategic thinker. He was completely outclassed by the Hillary Clinton organization. The only reason he was as successful as he was because he does have a personality and a message and a platform that she doesn't. She was an empty husk of a candidate, and that's why he was much better than her. And that would be a justification for why he should have won, and she should have. She really is a disappointment. Remember, in 2008, Barack Obama should have been just curb stomped by Hillary Clinton, and she got just destroyed by him.
That was funny to watch, actually. I remember that at the time. And she was so confident during the 2008 election that she was going to beat Barack Obama. And then it was kind of very similar to what happened in this election. It was just like, I'm going to win, blah, 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 blah. Then she gets stumped. And then she spends the next few years whining about how she lost to Barack Obama. Just like now she's complaining about how she lost. Like, she can't shut up about the fact that she lost the election. And I think she's been blaming, she's blaming the Electoral College a lot. But like it or not, the Electoral College has been a part of American political system for a long time.
Right, and that's
surprised she didn't call him super predator.
So was that?
I'm just surprised Hillary didn't call Obama a super predator.
Whoa, yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think what was the meanest thing Bill Clinton once said to Ted Kennedy on the phone. He was trying to get Ted Kennedy to support Hillary in 2008. He said, well, a few years ago, he would have been carrying our bags for us, so they really underestimated Barack Obama, who, you can say a lot of bad things about Barack Obama, but he knows how to win elections, and he picked great people to help him win elections, and he ran brilliant campaigns, and he had a real connection to a lot of his voters. Which that's the value. We're talking about electoral politics. We're not talking about like how we would want our leaders to behave and policies wise. I think Barack Obama was a fantastic politician in that respect. And some of those same attributes you could say about Bernie Sanders. You can't say them about Hillary Clinton. She doesn't have a vision. A lot of these people, these gay rights people, they talk about Donald Trump being homophobic, but Hillary Clinton was against gay marriage both in 2008 and in 2000 when she ran for Senate. You can talk about the fact that Hillary Clinton, at one point in 2000 when she was running for Senate, her Republican challenger said to her, I've signed a pledge not to take super PAC money. Why don't you take that pledge? He brought like a document, walked across the stage during the debate. This is Rick Lazio, the congressman from New York. They were running for Senate against each other. He said, I took this pledge. Your party is against dark money. I signed it. Why don't you sign it? What did people say about it? He was being misogynistic. He was being sexist because he went and challenged a woman and walked over and invaded her personal space. That's how the press processed it. And that's what she's been using since then. And John Mattis in his interview, his interview to Adrian, he used the same type of rationale. It's using guilt. He was saying about his former colleagues in this Bernie Sanders movement. He called them a couple times sad people. He said that they need treatment or something. What was the exact word that they used? I think he said treatment.
Yeah, I think that's about it. He definitely called them sad people, and I think he said they need help is what he said.
Yeah, and this is from somebody. They need help. He's the one with the bitter beer face from 2016, who keeps saying, it was Donald Trump who stole the election. It was these people that were stupid enough to believe Donald Trump's propaganda, but he hasn't produced evidence of it. And in the world that I hope will develop from all this madness, we will pay attention to more evidence as opposed to more hearsay and rumors, which is even BuzzFeed said we don't have evidence of this. Even though they reported the story, they said, well, we haven't uncovered any evidence of it. But all the other people who have featured his story since then have not issued that caveat emptor, that buyer beware. The fact of the matter is, we were talking last night. I was on just my stream, talking to the air. And I think both of you guys were in the chat. We were discussing Sean King, and we were discussing Jamel Hill, and it's really sad when those people have this huge platform, and they put out stories that have no factual basis, and they use this justification. They say, well, I believe the story of this woman, Sharita. I think her name was Sharita Jackson. from Texas, the one who was allegedly was groped by a state trooper or a police officer. So they're basing it on belief and on the fact that he has a professional relationship with the attorney in the case. I think the guy's name was Merritt. Well, that's all well and good, but he issued all of those declarations about this police officer before actually examining the body cam footage. And the body cam footage revealed that the account of this woman was baseless. And in fact, reading through her account, it reminded me exactly of a movie that I saw back in, I think it was 2006. It won the Oscar for Best Picture, Crash, where a woman is groped by a cop.
Oh, yes, I saw that one.
So yeah, it's really, this is the, notice how, we've been trying to be cautious with the Mattis file. Originally I did not want to call him a David Brock mole, but we've come to the point where we can say he said on the phone to Adrian, he said, I was reporting to them daily. What does that mean? You're reporting to them daily. Why is it that you're still showing posts from way after the election that have nothing to do with it, that have to do with a group that came up after the election? What exactly are you doing featuring posts like that on the Rachel Maddow show? That is what being a mole is. That's what being basically a weasel for David Brock is. And I am prepared to say that if he's not a mole, then I don't know what the fuck he's doing with his life, because that's mole activity.
Yeah, absolutely. It seems like again, when you're talking about reporting daily to the your opponent, then what else could you really be? I mean, he's actually like he was all about concern for the electoral process. But again, there was plenty of people he could have gone to that would have been more better to take care of this. Like he could have gone to Bernie Sanders and someone in his campaign, even though it was after the campaign had finished. But he could have brought it to their attention, but he didn't. He went immediately to Hillary Clinton's campaign and the Obama administration. So to me, that almost pretty much solidifies that he was more of a mole than anything.
Well, I even have, and I'm not going to show them on screen, but I have emails from, from people who they emailed me that they were involved in the whole campaign. And let me see here. There's one from Joanne Allen, where she said, "Hi, Ramon, thank you so much for your efforts in getting this story out to the public. We've been trying to challenge the false propaganda regarding Russian infiltration for a long time, but have had no luck gaining any traction." And then she discusses like possibly a future stream. Then we have, there's another one. Let me see here. It's more recent.
But anyway, this was one of the people that you had on your stream that you were talking to, right?
That's correct. Okay, yeah, I have these. So this was Josephine listening to your conversation. Okay, so she says, "Oh my gosh, where to begin?" Okay, after the campaign, the primaries, we did not have a bunch of people joining. So that's referring to his allegation that there were people coming in. In fact, the number of people on the San Diego for Bernie Sanders Facebook group page, now San Diego Berniecrats, was holding steady around 3,500. After Joanne and I left, Crystal basically stopped letting people into that group because she was too busy with her life to focus on that page. So no one new got admitted because she was the only administrator, Crystal, who was on the phone with you and me this week. That nobody could be admitted to the group, so this couldn't have happened. However, the people that did remain were on a mission to corral the Bernie people to fall in line and vote for Hillary. Many Bernie pages saw an increase in the VBNMW, which is her acronym for Vote Blue No Matter Who. He was never an admin, talking about Mattis. Crystal never admitted people with no profiles, and Joanne and I heavily screened people and checked their profiles very well. Can't speak for other pages. So then she says, haha, RT is not fake news. And I agree. You know, RT is biased news, but it's not fake. Okay. And then she continues, he can't make up his mind if the fake news stories were coming from Albania, Macedonia, or Russia, but to call RT fake news is laughable. Then she continues, Josephine, the fake news stories were that Hillary was corrupt. Newsflash, she is corrupt. And that was her belief before the election, Josephine's. And it was Jim's belief. It had nothing to do with Russians or Albanians. Then it says RT did not start the Write in Bernie campaign. His supporters started it because we hated both candidates and we knew the primaries were rigged and we were not going to fall in line. In fact, the Bernie or Bust group started long, long before the primaries were over. And I remember that. It's a fact. We had no intention of voting for Hillary. We told them long before the primaries were over that we wouldn't. They didn't believe us. Something the vote blue no matter who people can't accept or believe. Then it says, Aletta Pierce is an admin of many Facebook pages. She can offer more insight on all of this. And I am in touch with Aletta Pierce, but I haven't gotten her on air yet. Then she says, the supposed fake news stories say Hillary got money from Russia. Then she says, hello, the uranium deal. In many mainstream media, legitimate news stories covering it, and also how the Clinton Foundation got money directly from the Kremlin. True story. Then it says another supposed fake news story. This is something I also noticed. Her illness. Let's just say that Bernie wasn't constantly falling down like Hillary. Her illness wasn't fake, and people certainly were concerned about her well-being. Her falling down wasn't fake. Did it cause people to speculate? Maybe, sure. Was that the deciding factor whether to vote for her? She has a long laundry list of reasons. This was not the sole reason. So, you know, she writes 9 more paragraphs about this, but this was not in response to our live stream, Adrian. This was in response to your, you know, just the raw footage of you talking to Mattis. And look, John Mattis in that interview showed the real, he showed who he really is. He has a moral judgment against the other people in the campaign who would not vote for Hillary Clinton. He views it as a moral crusade to wag his finger at them and point to them and say, you assholes are responsible for the situation this country is in and why, you know, a lot of us don't have cushier jobs working for this state agency or getting this gig with the media or something. And instead we have to continue with this whole charade of a Russia narrative. That's really what John Mattis was saying, because to admit on the air or on the phone, actually, to admit on the phone to somebody that you were in daily contact with the David Brock campaign and basically to scoff at the notion that you were Hillary the troll. Look, again, if you look at the frame over here, you see that this is a post from after the election. There was no reason for him to continue to report things after the election about people that are real people. You know, it just has nothing to do with the truth. It has nothing to do with Russia.
Jesus, man, this is just this story is just getting crazy, man. I mean, everything that. Oh,
yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, this now that this story has been is now expanding. You guys have expanded on the story. This seems like a huge, like it's more and more. It's seeming like a rabbit hole. Like it's becoming a downward spiral, at least for John Mattis, because his credibility is nowhere as a journalist as of now. As like if anybody were to objectively read, even if a person on the left was to objectively read this story, like John Mattis would be at best a tinfoil conspiracy theorist, right?
No.
So like this guy has no credibility left. And as far as what I could understand about this guy, he is so chatty. For a guy who goes after scammers and all this, he was quite chatty about it. He was like a Bond villain explaining his sort of plan moments before he's trying to kill the hero, right? So I like this guy was really weird in that way. And as far as one more point I wanted to make was about the Hillary Clinton Foundation thing, the Clinton Foundation thing. Clinton, it seems the Clintons have no credibility even with the US, because at least from the Indian perspective, the Clintons were not trusted. The Indian administration has never trusted the Clintons, because whenever they used to say, "Oh, when she was like Secretary of, I think, Defense, what was she, or State? Sorry, Secretary of State.
Secretary of State, yeah.
Oh.
She visited Pakistan many times, apparently to tell Pakistan off. But there are rumors that there were many deals that went down at that time. So yeah, so as far as the Clinton Foundation goes, yeah, that's that. But this Mattis guy is like, I don't know, he was so openly chatty about his plan, which is weird. It just seems to me like he's like an attention hog of some kind.
Well, that's really, you know, you said that he has no credibility, but the fact is, you know, you're perceiving this from India, Arjun, and you're not. I mean, I know people that I've told this story to. You know, a friend of mine who's a diehard Democrat, liberal, you know, pro Hillary Clinton. And when I describe the story to him, and this is person, you know, I don't profess to say, you know, he's you know, a bad person or whatever. But when I got through with the description of what's going on, he said, "Well, do you think it's possible that John Mattis is himself a Russian agent?" And I was like, "What the fuck does that have to do with anything? It's not the Russia. Look, it's possible, but we're talking about what we have evidence of. Anything is possible, right?" And I had to say to him, you know, we got into a very heated discussion, and you know, it almost came, you know, it almost came to an end that, you know, we did not part on amiable terms. But this guy, I had to say to him, you know, I do believe that there's, you know, that there are UFOs, there are extraterrestrials that have, you know, they have visited the Earth. But I don't go and spout off and profess about it to people, because I'm not one of the people who collects proof of it. So we can believe in things, we can believe in certain theories, but to obsess over them, to make them into, you know, the subject of public of the public agenda, as the Democrats have, that is irresponsible. So, you know, going on, you know, you said, where's his credibility? Well, his credibility is in the fact that there are a lot of people who are not willing to read between the lines. I mean, how many people read that Politico story that got me started on this? I wasn't even intending to write anything about Bernie Sanders. And they just read through and they're like, I mean, you know, Bernie Sanders hacked by the Russians. Who gives a fuck? You know, and you know, you have to really read a lot of these stories in detail to see a lot of these journalists are lying, or they're not lying, but they're relying on very shaky sources in order to substantiate their information. So John Mattis, who complains about fake news, well, he talked for 47 minutes with an anonymous reporter from Canada whose name I made up. Did you give him the name that I gave you, Adrian?
Yeah.
Yeah, we made up a name, Grant McKinnon. You know, some dude, like typical Canadian, you know, Scottish Canadian name. You know, I had to make up something stereotypical. It would have been, I mean, if I would have had more time, it would have been like something like, you know, I mean, you throw out one. Let's say Woodrow Canuckfield or something. You know, we would have. I mean, this guy, he bought it hook, line, and sinker. Still hasn't issued a reply to anything because, you know, maybe he doesn't want to. I mean, I have tagged him on Twitter. It could be because I'm shadow banned that he doesn't notice what I tweet about him. But this is a gullible fool when it comes to people trying for an investigative reporter to be using sources and consenting to talk to people the way he has. You know, he's not the most intelligent person. He's not technologically savvy. He has no basis to comment about Facebook or anything. So when you say he has no credibility, his credibility relies on this, that he's able to go on shows like Ari Melber, which is another clip that I discovered this week where he was on. And, you know, they let him talk for, you know, minutes upon minutes about Russian hacking of the election. And you know, people just take it at face value because they're saying they're taking it on faith. They're not taking it on evidence that these news sources are reporting things accurately. So they had him on. This is, you can't hear the audio, but I'll show you here. They had Ari Melber, who was another idiot, on MSNBC. And you see here, John Mattis is here with Philippe Reines. Philippe Reines, who's one of Hillary's attack dogs, who's told journalists to go fuck themselves for saying stories that are defamatory towards Hillary Clinton. And he's just chatting with this guy who was one of the people who was issuing basically smears against Bernie Sanders himself during the campaign, and he's just here chatting and whatever. He never said and by the way, who did Philip Reines blame for a lot of this? He blamed Bernie Sanders. He was, it says here on the screen, Bernie Sanders backtracks on the claim that Russian interference is a question for Clinton. Mattis never challenged him. He was not a real Bernie Sanders supporter. There's no explanation other than that he was committed to an ulterior motive.
Mattis is on the right, or to my right, I'm guessing.
Mattis is he's the guy with the kind of reddish blonde hair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So about his credibility thing. So this guy seems to be very desperate to get his story out. So he's putting it on, as you were saying, like outlets with broken links and no presence almost physically. So he's putting it on blogs, he's putting it on broken links, he's putting it on, I don't know, he would put it on posters if he could. So, yeah, the question is that why is the left liberal media so desperate to just pick up any piece of trash story and just run with it?
Well, the answer to that is they depend on the same toxic internet that people on the right do and everybody else. They depend on, because realize this, okay? MSNBC's influence is waning. Remember, yesterday I was talking about ESPN a lot. ESPN is losing a lot of subscribers because people just don't care anymore. The sports events themselves aren't as interesting, and then there's the political commentary that people don't give a shit about. Now, if you tune into MSNBC, it's the same thing day after day after day after day. And they need somebody like John Mattis in order to be, this is our reliable researcher. They have another guy, much more prominent, Malcolm Nance, who's a former CIA agent. And at one point they were calling him the Trump dossier expert. That was his title on the bottom of the screen. So, they do this because they're scraping the bottom themselves. So John Mattis himself, he'll feature like that one blog, thelastmenandovermen.com, which is, it's just this blog of some asshole who, is running for Congress. And those are the types of people that they're in the same community. So just like they would accuse, let's say you or I would appear on Alex Jones. And they would start calling us conspiracy theorists because we appear on Alex Jones. Well, there are Alex Joneses of the left. They're called Cenk Uygur. They're called, and to be fair, I think that's actually an insult to Alex Jones. Alex Jones has actually revealed certain stories that have been true. Cenk Uygur is not a real journalist. He doesn't do reporting on actual news. TYT. I mean, let's think about it honestly. Their journalistic expertise is less even than the three of us, because they don't actually reveal stories. What they do is they comment on things that are already out there. That's why I was commenting on Jemele Hill yesterday. Jemele Hill's a journalist technically, but she's a commentator. She's an opinion person. That's the distinction. Sean King, to some degree, would be a journalist because he does expose certain stories. But the fact of the matter is that a lot of the stories he exposes are just nonsense. They're made up crap. And his own history is called into question. People question whether he talks about, being a black man in America, but, that rests upon. Well, his explanation, he grew up in a white family. He claims that his mom had an affair with a black guy. And that's how he claims to be a black person. Now, how are you supposed to prove that? The only way to prove any of that is to take a DNA test. And he can't. He won't. He's doing the Elizabeth Warren defense. You know, how are you going to challenge me to prove my identity? Well, you know, Sean King, his reliability is. I mean, how many times can you put out the same garbage again and again and again before people stop trusting you? And believe me, there are people even on the black left who are saying, "Even enough with this clown."
There's the one drop rule in reverse, kind of. Yeah. So one more thing about that this story is like after that tax Trump's tax returns thing that Maddow had hiked up at one point, and then it fell flat because it was just a very normal piece of paper which somebody had just put in somebody's anyway. So the fact was that I was seeing this Fox News video at that time. Geraldo Rivera became infamous after that Jimmy Hoffa thing, right? That fell flat, kind of.
Al Capone.
So, oh, sorry, Al Capone, whatever. So, at that time, somebody made a funny remark about that, saying that with Maddow doing this, the heats of Rivera, because now she's the new Geraldo Rivera. Okay, so I'm saying like I don't think with Maddow referring to this like this matters thing with reference to this, I don't think she cares about her reputation anymore, at least as a journalist.
I think it's really just all about the views now these days. It doesn't matter. It's like, it's not about reporting the news anymore. It's about reporting your bias. And as long as she keeps her audience that are willing to agree with her bias, then it doesn't really matter what the actual news or the facts are anymore.
It's like those celebrity speeches at award functions.
Yeah, the thing is that, you know, you guys mentioned earlier that at one point, Rachel Maddow was considered to be a very, I don't know if you'd call it prestigious, but she was considered like a more credible journalist. But that was during the Bush administration. I think she was on Air America Radio, which was a progressive radio network. I think Al Gore was involved for a while in it, or, you know, a number of other progressive millionaires and billionaires. So she was criticizing the Bush administration and correctly over, you know, issues like Hurricane Katrina and the Iraq War. And, you know, at that time, yes, there was an issue where you needed people on the left to criticize President Bush too. And then, you know, Barack Obama came to power, and you know, the black or sorry, the progressive left, you know, and the black left, by the way, you know, Michael Eric Dyson, those people became corporate shills. They basically bought into, they became invested in the institution of the presidency. And they needed Barack Obama to succeed. So what happened to the right wing? What happened to Fox News? Well, they started putting out a lot of news that was, you know, we can debate the truth of the birther thing. We can debate the truth of, you know, all the stuff about him being a Muslim or whatever. But it's not really what Americans care about. You know, people wanted, the reason that they turned against Obama was because of Obamacare. It had nothing to do with him being born in another country, which, you know, with all due respect, I don't think it's the biggest issue of the modern era, whether Barack Obama was born in the U.S. or not. I mean, it is a legal issue, but it's hard to prove. You know, there are a lot of issues with his past that, you know, we would like to know, but those are not the issues that are going to get the public's trust. So Fox News, for the first 2 years of Obama, lost a lot of its credibility. You know, Sean Hannity and Glenn Beck were basically looked at as frothing at the mouth rabid dogs. And, you know, they paid the price for that. They paid the price in credibility, especially Glenn Beck, who now has flipped over several times. And, you know, he later apologized to Obama and Black Lives Matter or whatever. And now he's come full circle. Now he put on the MAGA hat like a week ago or something, you know, and he's trying to ingratiate himself back with the right. But on the left, they never did adjust to the new Trump era. They were believing that they reached this status of royalty, including Rachel Maddow, and they were not willing to give it up. So when she goes on the news now, you realize that every story that's being revealed now you know, under Obama, they could make a lot of hay out of the symbolism of him being the first person. For example, there was an article he published in the Journal of American Medical Association, and people were making a big deal about how his and you know, I'll just pull it up. Are you guys stretched for time, or
Not really.
can I bring it up?
Go ahead.
So
We'll bring it up, and then we'll do some final thoughts on the Mattis file, and then I believe Arjun wanted to do some updates about some of the stuff that's been going on after the India election.
Right. So yeah, I'll try to make this brief. So his article was called the Affordable Care Act and the Future of the U.S. Healthcare So where was this? Yeah, it says paper in a top medical journal has an unexpected author, Barack Obama. But even here it says the JAMA paper highlights some of the successes of the Affordable Care Act. So he publishes an article about the healthcare industry in a medical journal. Usually in medical journal, you read something about actual, you know, medicine and biology or whatever. He was basically boosting for himself. He was being a booster for his own program, and that's what they would focus on under Barack Obama. They can't anymore. They have to report actual news, and they can't adjust to that, because they would have to report news that's adverse to Barack Obama's legacy, like the spy scandal.
Jesus, that's the point we're at these days. This is the point that journalism has gotten to, and it's gotten so bad that it's taken people like us and who just come online. It's pretty much not even our jobs. It's like our hobbies now to report the news and try and expose all the fake stories that are out there. I mean, you know, it's bad when that's the case. And so many people these days don't use actual authentic news sources to get their news anymore. I mean, I'm sure people from the older generation still do this. They'll tune into their 6 o'clock news or whatever, but people from upcoming generations, from millennials, Generation Z, they're all going online to Twitter, Facebook, and all these social media accounts and just talking to other people. And that's how they're getting their news. You know, it's bad when. And even Tim Pool came out not too long ago when he was talking about, it was only a video maybe a couple days ago, where he was talking about the death of journalism, how so many people are losing support for journalism. The journalists these days are starting to, people are still going into journalism, yet there's no jobs available because people like us are just doing it on our part-time now.
Yeah, well, I think you know, you're absolutely right, and that's why, you know, a lot of these celebrity journalists like Sean King or Jamel Hill, they're actually running their own companies into the ground. She was, I mean, yesterday I was featuring her. I found that article where she has the photo spread, and they're making a big deal about her award, and the photo had her wearing a Sprite T-shirt while drinking a glass of Hennessy at a promotional booth. So she's making money off of promotions and endorsements. Meanwhile, ESPN is losing millions of subscribers. So that's the state of journalism today. The journalists are trying to get rich, but they're bankrupting their own networks.
Well, maybe they need to burn it down to the ground before and rebuild something from the ashes, you know? So do we have any final thoughts from either of you concerning this Mattis file?
Arjun, you can go first if you want.
Well, the Mattis story is an interesting story because like Ramon, you consider yourself to be a conservative guy, right?
Yeah, I'd say like a lot of my beliefs are conservative, but you know.
Okay, is it will it be accurate to say that you're like, say, center right?
I don't know. I mean, it's a hard question. I think no, I'd probably be considered like conservative libertarian.
Okay, but okay, fine. The right leaning at least. Let's run with that. Okay.
Sure.
So the fact is that a right-leaning person is trying to expose massive electoral corruptions that have gone on in this campaign. In the left, that just shows you what the condition of the left is. That where the right has to like step in and like check the left in this way. Because see, mostly if you ask people these days, it's an important story, no doubt. But mostly if you ask people these days, they just outright say, oh, we don't care about the left. And we don't care about stories from the left. They're just rabid, I don't know, whatever they are. So, but the fact is, these are important stories that actually show the political situation of what the left is. The left is in currently. It is just they're just a fancy building, standing barely somehow sticking on and standing on a termite infested foundation. Basically, the foundations are gone. It's about to topple over. That means in Hindi there is a term called hawa ka jhoka, which means just a gust of wind can blow you over. So I'm just here patiently waiting for that gust of wind.
I guess a similar sort of example we have in English would be it's built on a house of cards.
Yeah, absolutely. And to reply, I'll give my last word on the mass file, and we can go on to your topics. I think I find it frustrating. It is me. I'm not a leftist. I don't like Bernie Sanders, but I find it frustrating that I'm one of the few people who cares about this. Jamarl Thomas also had them on, who is a far left progressive, and I give him credit for it, for willing to hear them out and hear me out. But like Arjun said, it's the idea here is that there are people on the left who do want to know the truth, who do see the lies of the Clinton campaign and of the Democratic establishment. But in many ways, they themselves are crawling through the dark, and they're failing when they're trying to discover things. There was a lawsuit in order to get the funds back from the DNC, but it didn't progress very well, and that was a good effort. But there's other things that they're doing that they're basically they're almost it's as if the DNC and Obama and Clinton corrupted the Democrats so bad that there's nothing the left can do now that will preserve anything of it. It's the cancer is spread so bad that it's not worth saving the patient. And that's why people they're talking about letting the party implode or pursue a different party. There's people biting each other over who's more progressive or not. Whether you can be a pro-life progressive, whether you can be a progressive that accepts money from a super PAC at all, whether you can be a white male progressive. Who's the bigger progressive in California? Or I think in Texas this week there was the lesbian Hispanic sheriff running against some other woman. That's not what is going to garner more support among American voters. But really, when you talk about all the deception and duplicity that's going on, I wonder how much we still don't know, because this I believe actually was a much wider phenomenon than just John Mattis.
Well, I think one thing that I've when I was talking to John Mattis, the one thing I kind of learned, which is probably a symptom of what's affecting a lot of journalism these days, is the fact that they'll look at it from their one side, and it is a bubble, they live in a bubble, but they look at it from the one side, but they're also willing to dispel any sort of facts or information that comes out that speaks out against their ideas. So if something comes out and might dispute their theory, then they're willing to completely throw it to the side just to stay on this, just to either think that they're right or to keep their support, and they're not willing to rock the boat at all. And I think this is probably the main problem that journalists face these days. I mean, when we're talking about fake news, it's not so much that the people are not, that they're pushing fake stories, which sometimes they do, but mostly it's the fact that they're willing to use lies of omission to actually push their biases. So with that, I wanted to move on to a little bit, because what Arjun wanted to talk a little bit more about what's going on in India, because as we've been, Arjun and I have done a couple streams lately about the problems that is facing India since the election. And when the election started up, we were having when the election started up, there was a lot of violence that was happening in India. And by the end, when the polls finally closed, it turns out that there were upwards of 26 people who were killed due to political violence. And this even included an Indian minister who ended up stabbing somebody. So it got really out of hand. And this had to do with a lot of the corruption that was coming out of the left-wing party and the left-wing candidate, who was on her final, on the back foot. She had lost a lot of support in many of the ridings that they used to hold. And so right now we have, right now she is, I don't know what's actually, I should probably ask you about that. What's going on with that candidate, Arjun?
Okay, so Bold, you might want to stick around for this. Like, it's going to be funny as hell. Like, the elections here are crazy, right? Though our journalists are better because there are still some journalists left who have a lot of credibility. But the fact is, elections here are crazy, right? Especially when it comes to elections which are fought against left candidates, because left is unbelievably violent in India. Because the left, like you guys have Antifa, we have Antifa times a billion, right? We have Maoists, right? These guys, these goons, these goons will come out and they will start rioting on the streets, right? They will enter homes, they will beat up people who are not inclined to vote for the left candidate. So when the left was doing this, there was this anti-left candidate who came out from the Centre-Left Party Congress, which was a socialist party, which is sort of the grand old party of India. Now the fact is, they were a corrupt party. They were fighting the left. So from within the Congress party, a faction broke out and became the Trinamool Congress, which is headed by this West Bengal Chief Minister, a female West Bengal Chief Minister. Let me just be specific about that because a lot of people harp about that. Her name is Mamata Banerjee. Now the fact is, she was an agitationist. She was like an activist kind of politician. She claims she's from a very poor background. She used to live in a slum and all that, but highly doubtful. All of it. Now, she was fighting the left for many years. Yeah, politically. She wasn't winning until finally one day she did win. But she found that the only way to beat the left was to become more left than the left. So what she did was she ended up taking all the cadre from the left parties, from the Communist Party Marxists, the Communist Party Marxist-Leninists, the Communist Party Maoists, who are the revolutionary communists who live in the jungles and the kamikaze attacks they do on the central police, on the government officials, on election booths, you name it. They're called the Naxals because they are from this place called Naxalbari. These guys, the left used to do things like go to villages, name people by cutting off their hands and legs to ensure 98%, 99% vote share. There is this spiritual sect of Hindus called Ananda Margis. Ananda Margis are warrior saints. Let's put it that way. The left, what they did was, this is in the 90s. Ananda Margis were protesting against the left. They were holding with swords. They were standing in the middle of the street. They were like protesting. The Communist Party people, the cadre came. They threw kerosene on them and lit them on fire, burned them alive. They used to do such things. So Mamata Banerjee took the cadre of that kind of cadre, and she formed what are called football clubs, because football is popular, means soccer. Soccer is popular in India, in West Bengal. Sporting clubs, athletics clubs, all these things. Like I emphasize on the quotation marks. So the fact is, after these goons switched allegiances, so to say, they carried on the same activity. And the only way she could control these goons are through money. Now the fact is, the money is being squeezed by the central government, the BJP government. And also at the same time, the RSS and BJP are together increasing the BJP's vote share in Bengal. Earlier, BJP's vote share used to be 1%, 2%. Okay. before, when the Communist Party was in power for 34 years, which is 8 consecutive terms, I think, uh, the BJP vote share was, I think, 0.1, 0.2%. Then after Mamata Banerjee came in 2011, BJP increased its vote share to 1 or 2%. Then now in the last election, BJP increased its vote share to 17%, or was it 16%? I'll have to look that up, but it was 16 or 17%. So basically, BJP is sort of invading Mamata's territory. Now, I mentioned this to Jimso last time, that I had a very interesting conversation with a Muslim cab driver. I had Ubered, and the cab driver was Muslim, and he was just raging against Mamata, unprovoked. I didn't even ask him; he was just raging. He just started a conversation and started raging against Mamata, which I found was very surprising, because Muslims are sort of pets. It's a pet vote bank. Like she doesn't even have to try with it, right? So when I asked, so I pretended to be a political novice. So I took a leaf out of Adrian's playbook, and I pretended to be a political novice. And the fact is that I just asked him that, why are you raging against Mamata? Like, hasn't she done a lot for you guys? Like, she's outright like wooing you guys. She does so much for you. So he says that this woman is hurting the livelihood of middle class people, right? I said, okay, I went along with him. Okay, I asked him, okay, how? He says she has put traffic cameras everywhere, and any infraction, she puts a fine, 100 rupees, which is about $2. 100 rupees fine straight. Which I have an interesting story about that. My grandmom, who's 81 years old. Okay, now this is how desperate Mamata is for money. My grandmother is 81 years old. She has a car which she uses regularly, right? Suddenly one day she asked me to check if any outstanding fines or traffic fines were there on her account. So I checked the Kolkata Traffic Police website. And I entered her car details and all that, and I found 7-8 cases against her on dates when she hadn't even used the car. And if you dispute these cases, you will get nowhere. They will just straight call you for a court appearance. So she is, and then we heard she has increased property taxes by 10, 20, 30%. Okay, my dad just bought a house here. Straight 20% increase on property taxes.
20%?
In some cases, 30%. I think it's dependent on the size of the house. She has tripled the electricity bill, means the per unit cost of electricity. It is, I think, twice or 2.5 times more than the rest of the country. When in the rest of the country, electricity is becoming cheaper, they're moving to solar power, they're moving away from coal and moving towards solar power. I think the biggest solar plant in Asia was just opened up and has become functional. Nuclear power plants have opened up in Chennai and in other places. Where power is becoming cheaper, in West Bengal, power is becoming more expensive, electricity. Water is becoming more expensive. There is a huge problem of arsenic content in underground water in Kolkata. She's doing nothing about it. In the place where I live, my dad used to be in the army, so the army had some schemes. So he bought a flat from that scheme. So this place has a borewell system, right? They dig into the earth and it taps into the underground water. The underground water has arsenic and super high iron content. So high, and it is so polluted that, at least it was before they put filters. Expensive filters, by the way, which has increased housing society maintenance costs by a lot. The pipes would get jammed frequently, iron deposits. the geysers, we have water heaters, we have all these, all the appliances, whether it be dishwashers, whether it be washing machines, would get jammed, blocked. Why? Iron content is so high. The iron would start depositing if you left a tap running, or if your tap was dripping over a period of time, there would be iron deposits on the floor. Your marble would get ruined. We have marble flooring and all. It got ruined. We had to like really like employ scrubbers and all that whole bunch of things we had to do. So there are real sociological problems which are now creeping up because of this woman's policies, right? And I'm talking from a very common person. These may seem ordinary in the thing in the long run, but in the scheme of things, but this is affecting the common man, because I am from a family which is okay. We are middle class, upper middle class. But what is to be said about people who are not middle class, right? They have to pay the same amount for electricity. They have to pay the same amount for water. They have to pay the same amount for, even if they want to buy a small house, a one room apartment, they have to pay astronomical prices. And if these guys they protest, what happens? Your friendly neighborhood athletic society representative will pay you a visit to your house. It has happened. Okay, there have been riots, there have been muggings, there have been disappearances in some cases. And the best, you know what's the most interesting fact about that? Guess who all are exempt from this?
People who are member of her administration, or sorry, people member who support her.
No. Okay, let's say people who support her. Who supports her? Hindus don't support her.
What's that?
Hindus don't support her. So who supports her?
Oh, then we're talking about the Muslims.
Okay. Muslims have got a free reign in this place. Okay. And I'll explain how. I'm just recapping a bit of what we spoke about last time, just to refresh everyone's memory, so that even more bold can sort of like join in. The fact is, Muslims are arrogant as hell in this state. Everywhere else, they're normal, because now, because of the Hindu majority and a pro-Hindu government, Muslims are now settling down all over the place. Right? They had this arrogance which they had earlier, which now in the rest of the country it is now calming down, because they now know that you can't push the Hindus around. But in Bengal, Muslims are on the other extreme, right? They will go to, even if there is one Muslim guy in a Hindu majority area, during Eid, Ramzan, Bakr, what will they do? They will get cows and they will slaughter cows. In India, beef consumption is illegal, right? Cow slaughter is illegal. But in Bengal, they do it openly. And in some cases, the police comes and stands guard outside their house while they slaughter the cows, so that these guys don't get attacked by the Hindus.
Yeah, and you were saying before that they'll do this like in open public, you know, like it's not just like they're doing
open public areas. Yeah. So, and now what has happened is the BJP is cracking down on Mamata, right? They're not only horning in on her territories, what they're doing is they are cracking down on her. Now, in 2016, when she got elected, or was it 2015, the year before she got re-elected for the second term, the BJP put a terrorism case on her. Okay, which is right now low-key. It's not in the public discourse right now, but it's there. It's hanging over her head like a guillotine. What happened was, suddenly one day we a few months before the assembly elections was to happen, there was suddenly the National Investigative Agency, the Central Bureau of Investigation, the Research and Analysis Wing. It was a multi-agency raids that happened on the Bengal-Bangladesh border. What ended up happening was that they discovered 180 or more than 180 three-man terror cells working and active there. And the interesting bit was that they were not aimed at India. They were locally recruited Indians and some Bangladeshi illegals who had crossed over illegally, who had been recruited into this in concert with Jamaat-e-Islami Ittehad Bangladesh, which is the Bangladesh wing of the of ISIS. I think that's their name, or something like that is their name. I'm not sure about the name, but it was one of those groups. And the Pakistan ISI. It was later proved some links to the Pakistan. Now the thing is, why did Mamata get caught in this thing? Because it was found that through some proxies, apparently funding was coming in from the Trinamool Congress. They were funding this through some Muslim organizations, right? And when they questioned these Muslim organizations, they immediately capitulated. They immediately capitulated and said, no, we were getting funding from Mamata. Okay, and who were these aimed at? This was aimed at supporting Khalida Zia, who's the pro-hardliner, who was at that time the pro-hardliner prime ministerial candidate in Bangladesh, who was standing opposite Sheikh Hasina, who's a pro-democracy and a secular leader. So what happened?
Oh, either he dropped out or he may have just dropped out for a minute because he said he had to make a phone call. So he may be back in a bit. But go ahead, Arjun.
So the fact is that all this is happening, right? So now, once her funding is closed, once her funding has now been closed off, what has happened is the government has closed off the money laundering routes. The government has closed up dark funding for like you have dark funding in PACs and super PACs. Government has closed off all unknown donors, anonymous donors, like all those. You have to make your donor list public. You can only donate to a political party through electoral bonds. That is the new thing that the government has started. That you cannot donate in cash or kind. You have to donate through electoral bonds. Electoral bonds are a government issued thing, which the donor has to pay the central government, and the central government will issue electoral bonds, which the political party will take to the banks and cash. So they have done that. Now the fact is, okay, all that is fine. Now they are withdrawing central forces, central support from West Bengal. Now this being the backdrop has turned Mamata feral. She is feral right now. She is in that cornered mouse state. Now the fact is, a cornered mouse is the most dangerous when it's cornered, right? So that's what is basically happening. All this electoral violence, open violence, is happening because of this. And as of now, after those violences, she has realized that this has been a major PR disaster for her. It has become a major PR disaster for her, and she has backed off on this electoral event. There were some clashes between BJP workers and Trinamool workers, some injuries, no deaths. And that is where it stands right now. Now, politically speaking, the BJP government at the center, okay, the president is from the RSS and was a BJP member. The president, the governor of Bengal is a former BJP guy. The vice president is a BJP guy. Okay, the prime minister is from BJP, right? And the home minister is definitely BJP. So the BJP has all the pieces in place, right? They can dismiss Mamata Banerjee's government and declare president's rule on West Bengal today, right now, in the next 30 seconds. They can do it. Why aren't they doing it? That is a question which a lot of people have asked. So why isn't, if she is such a cancer on society, if she's such a violent person, if she's so thuggish and such a criminal element, if she is, then why isn't she being dismissed? And now that took a little bit of like analysis, like little bit of reading between the lines, and I was thinking, discussing it with different people. what I began to realize was that BJP is not interested in dismissing the girl. And you would ask me why? She's like killing BJP workers. She's doing this. She's doing that. She's fostering goons. Okay, she's causing great sociological problems where Muslims are free to run amok in the streets and like beat up police officers without any consequences, right? And masjids are openly the imams and mullahs are from masjids openly sort of propagating inflammatory rhetoric and all the propaganda, pro-Islamic propaganda and all that, right? And there is a problem of terrorism. The Indian Mujahideen, there was a friend of mine who, let's just say, can neither confirm or deny that he works for the government. Let's just say that he could. When I asked him that was there such a problem, in a very non-committal, he didn't confirm nor deny. Said that intelligence bureaus had busted many. Well, I wouldn't say many, at least one. He told me about one Indian Mujahideen cell, 5-man cell, which was working in Bengal. On the western border of Bengal. Eastern border is Bangladesh, western border is a state called Bihar. So the Bihar has also got a huge Islamist problem. Islamist and a Maoist problem. It's a nexus. So on the western border of Bengal, there was a cell, 5-man cell, which was busted. So the fact is, so there is a huge Islamism problem right now brewing in Bengal, where the population of Muslims 20 years back was 5 or 8%. Today it is more than 30%. Okay, where are the extra Muslims coming from?
Pakistan?
No, Bangladesh. Illegals. Now illegals are being given Aadhaar, like the national identity cards, ration cards, gas, like natural those cooking gas subsidies. How are they getting government documents, citizenship documents, passports in some cases, just out of the blue? How are they getting these? Somebody is doing it. Somebody in the government machinery is doing it. Earlier, the communists were doing it, but Mamata has just industrialized that process.
So she's making it even worse than it is now, I see, eh? And also, just Pinochet in the chat, I wanted me to ask is, has the government move to a cashless system affected the political process in India?
Oh, I'll get to that, and that is connected to the Congress party in the Karnataka elections. I'll get to that in a minute. Pinochet, hang around, buddy. So, yeah, I'll explain that in detail. Yeah. So now the thing is, what the BJP has come up with. See, Modi has a 3-point agenda, right? Which we have spoken of in detail in the previous podcast. He says development, nationalism, and Hindutva. Hindutva is the Hindu way of life, the Hindu culture, Hindu way of life, connecting to the Hindu roots. Now, this is a 3-point agenda which the left has just collapsed. It has not been able to fight. And Modi is vehemently, he's just hammering the opposition on corruption. He's just taken such strong measures on corruption. Now, I'm trying to be objective here and not become a fanboy. So let me just choose my words carefully and just present it objective, right? Because because if I fanboy, then that's like a disservice to the story. So the fact about this is that Modi has this technique of how he goes after the left, right? He just defames, keeps defaming till a point comes where the people are fed up, and the people only start trolling Modi himself and telling him off that why aren't you going after the left? Why aren't you going up? And Modi is an Oscar he deserves an Oscar for every performance of playing the victim. He just 24/7 plays the victim, right, against the opposition. That has destroyed the opposition. That has played a significant part in destroying the opposition. What he does is that anytime the opposition, in this case Mamata Banerjee, attacks him, he just goes to either he sits in the parliament and plays the victim, or he holds rallies. In those rallies, he says, "Look at what they're saying to me. I'm a low caste, poor boy. My mother was a dishwasher and a cleaning woman in somebody's house. I used to sell tea as a child on a train station. I'm from a backward class. Look at what these elitists are telling me. Look at what these elitists are telling me. Right? They're insulting a backward class boy like me, which means they're insulting all the poor people of India. And this is a technique. He just flips the script on the opposition, and he just has destroyed them, which he has done to Mamata. Right? Now, Mamata was famously involved in. It is at this moment alleged. Her personal involvement is alleged, but let's go on with the story, and it will become more clear. 2 chit fund scams, right? And now this was one of her popular money laundering schemes. Let's allege it. 2 chit fund scams, one through a chit fund called Rose Valley and one called Sarada. And there was another called Narada, but that is, as of now, it is a little vague on how much he was involved in that. So there are 3 chit fund scams. Now the fact is, the government has arrested all her right-hand man, her left-hand man, and some people in her cabinet, and the others are every day being called for police interrogations. Right? Monday, one minister is being called. Tuesday, another minister is being called. Wednesday, another minister is being called. So they have the investigative agencies have basically formed a rota system on on which day we will interrogate which minister. It's become like that. So the law is closing in on her money laundering and corruption. Law is closing in on her terrorism links and links to the extremist elements in Bangladesh and Bengal. Okay, the law is closing in on her links to a whole bunch of other things, right? Now, and the government has, through electoral bonds, made the electoral donation process cashless for her and entirely monitored by and entirely through the system. So she cannot defraud over there. Then the government demonetized high value currency notes. And at that time, so black money at that for a long time became worthless. Okay. Then they have formed a central taxation system called the goods and services tax, where you can't put too many extra taxes on goods and services. So where is Mamata going to get her money? Right? More because people, as the national political climate now stands, there is no industry in West Bengal. There is, because the communists drove the industry out. There are no businesses, industries, nothing of that sort. Right? Now, how is Mamata now going to get money? Because all the industrialists are switching sides to funding of the BJP. Now, like banks cannot be, now the loopholes are being closed down in the banks, so financial system cannot be again. So she is now in a desperate situation. Nobody wants to donate to her party. So how does she pay her goons that she has fostered in the hundreds of thousands across the state? Okay, it's not thousands, it's not hundreds, it's hundreds of thousands of goons. Because in Calcutta alone, there must be some tens of thousands of these athletic clubs, each with a membership of maybe 100 to 200. Okay, so in a state which has a population of, I think, 60 million, a state which has a population of 60 million, the rate and the ratio of the common public to goons is so high that you can't. It is not safe, right? The cleaning lady who works in my house and the cook who works in my house, yeah, they're young women. Yeah, they're like in their early 30s, and the cleaning woman is like in her late 20s. They live in an area which is Muslim majority, right? It's a ghetto which is Muslim majority. And they say, we feel unsafe. So because the police will not help them if something happens. So now, in this kind of a sociological system, situation, economic situation, which is, and the legal situation, which is like a holy trinity, which is like bearing down on Mamata, this burden is becoming too much. So she's just lashing out, and now that she is lashing out, what the BJP is doing is broadcasting it all over the country, and in some cases all in other countries. The BJP is making sure the opposition leaders' things are broadcast all over the country. Everybody sees it. Everybody in the neighboring countries also see it. So that nobody wants to do business with these leaders. So where does she get the money from? By raising property taxes, by trying to do some form of electoral fraud. Okay, intimidating the state election commission officers, intimidating the election the observers and all these people. Intimidating judges, right? She has been known to intimidate lawyers and judges of Calcutta High Court. So she is like a don, like a mafia don kind of character. Okay, she has become like that. Now the BJP, what it's doing is, it is just picking her stories up and just flashing it all over. The defamation is at work. Now what has happened is, according to recent polls, it is seeming that she will not get re-elected. So what she is resorting to is like election violence. So that is the background of Bengal. That is the background of Bengal.
And just, it sounds from what everything you've said so far, just to kind of just to answer Pinochet's question, it sounds like it's had a good effect and a bad effect by this whole idea of a cashless system, because it's cut her money supply. But then at the same time, it's kind of had a bad effect because she's raised the property taxes, raised electricity, anything she can to pay off these goons who are working for her, who are who want their fucking money.
Yeah. So to further elaborate on that, the fact is, Bihar, as I said, Bihar was a state which was ruled by the opposition. The BJP government broke the opposition alliance and in partnership with one of the opposition candidates, formed the government there and took the state. Right. Jharkhand, which is just south of Bihar, also on the western border of West Bengal, is a BJP state. Madhya Pradesh, which is on the southwestern border of West Bengal, is Chhattisgarh is a BJP state, and so is Madhya Pradesh. Odisha is ruled by a chap who is neutral in the political arena, which is the southern neighbor of West Bengal, and he doesn't want anything to do with Mamata Banerjee. She has appealed to him for support so many times, he has just not even returned her calls. Right? Assam, which used to be opposition-ruled state, BJP took that. Okay, and all the Bangladeshi illegals who have been gathering over there, they are now under they're under investigation by the government. Because the government has released the National Registry of Citizens, right? Which the government can anytime say this person is a citizen, this person is not a citizen, right? It sounds like one of those Gestapo type moves, but the fact is, it is being done in a sort of a different way, where the only people afraid in this case are Muslims, because many of them are illegals, right? So Mamata and what the Assam government ended up doing was, they sent whole bunch of Muslim illegals to West Bengal, saying they have come from Bengal and I don't think they're Indian citizens, so you take them in. Now, the last thing Mamata wants is more Muslims in her state, because she's already finding it hard to contain the cadres. She's finding it hard to contain the imams and the Maulvis, who are now frothing from the mouth, right? Because she encouraged them in the beginning of her first term, and now they're frothing at the mouth. Now, coming back to the conversation I had with that cab driver, saying, I asked him, then who's the viable candidate? I said the only other viable candidate is BJP, because I am seeing that only they are the opposition now, because Congress is gone, because CPM is gone. So interestingly, what this guy said was, BJP, we have never voted for them. We have never voted for them since after independence, and we will never vote for them. And he added a caveat to that. He said the BJP doesn't want our votes.
That's the most ridiculous
So,
thing ever, because every politician wants everyone's vote. So absolutely, they would have taken on the Muslim vote.
exactly right. That would make sense. Now the fact is, now if you see the national scenario, what BJP is doing is, okay. After this, I asked him, then who will you vote for? We will vote for Congress or we will vote for the Communist Party. They are good friends to us. I said, so that got me thinking, this is a masterstroke, right? So Muslims are confused who they will vote for, right? And BJP has just propped up a bunch of players, in some cases funded them directly or indirectly to just divide the Muslim vote, right? So if the Congress, the various communist parties and the Trinamool Congress and all these guys, if they're all vying for the Muslim votes, because the Hindus are pissed off with these guys, right? They have been anti-Hindu since independence because of socialism and whatnot. These guys, what BJP has done is said we don't want Muslim vote. So what does the Muslim vote bank do? Now they're confused and now they're fractured. So basically, what BJP has ended up doing is made the Muslim community politically irrelevant. Their vote has no value. What they have said is, and they have attacked it in gender and sectarian sect basis also. They told the Shia Muslims, well, which is about 15% of the Muslim population in India, saying that we like the Shias, they are good Muslims. And immediately Shias dumped the Sunnis because of the eternal Shia-Sunni conflict. They dumped the Sunnis and said, we are with the BJP. And immediately they got tagged as good Muslims. Right? Then BJP came out with another masterstroke saying the instant divorce law in Sharia is illegal. The Supreme Court passed an order where they said no, the triple talaq or the triple divorce thing, where a man can just walk up to a woman and say divorce 3 times and just is done. You can do it over email, WhatsApp, SMS, text. You can send an e-card saying divorce, and it's done. It's legal, right? And it had other problems also. There was like child trafficking, child prostitution was also linked to it, temporary marriages, and a whole bunch of other things. So, yeah, so you had mentioned that in a tweet also, right?
Yeah, there was an article that I came across which was talking about this sort of temporary marriage. And when I asked you about it, you were talking about how it's, if anything, it's a form of prostitution more than anything else. It's a way. It is, eh? Is this
because the sheikhs? No, because
this law does it? Oh, go ahead.
I'll explain. Let me explain. First of all, the temporary marriages and the triple talaq thing. What it does is, sheikhs from the Middle East, what they do is they temporarily marry and shack up with young girls, minor girls, and they vamoose after that. Okay. And it's a thing, right? They'll come and in some cases for $10, $20, like parents have sold their minor girls to sheikhs and all that, a bunch of things. It's a sad thing. So BJP is trying to break that. BJP, which has been always attacked as a misogynist party, as a anti-woman party. Okay, a party of Neanderthals, of people who are just like extremists and all that. BJP is saying, oh no, we are pro-gender equality, we are pro-minority, we are pro this, we are pro that. They've just co-opted the left liberal talking points. And the left is at a loss. Now, coming back to Mamata, all this is flourishing in her state, right? where cattle slaughter is banned. Like you can slaughter and eat buffaloes. You can have any other thing. You cannot eat cows in India. You cannot. In all 29 states, it is banned. Except, no, it's not all. In 27 of the 29 states, it is banned. In West Bengal, it is semi-banned. In Kerala, it is, you can, Kerala is a southern state which is ruled by the Communist Party. It has been for a long time. So you can have beef. But what these guys do is openly slaughter cattle. There is a Supreme Court order which says you cannot slaughter cows because it affects the majority community's beliefs. Two, you cannot sell cows of whether they are young cows, whether they're calves, whether they're old or infirm cows. It doesn't matter. You cannot sell cows for slaughter and consumption. So, under the Congress government, India had become the largest exporter of beef in the world. And now the BJP has come down hard on that, and they have even said no more any abattoirs indulging in sale and slaughter of cows and calves. You cannot. It's or closed. It's illegal, and they came and sealed all those abattoirs and all that. So all this is happening in and around Mamata, and she is finding herself isolated, and she is lashing out. This is the context of Bengal, the election. Bengal election is a ticking time bomb, okay, which there are only two possible outcomes. A, Mamata defames herself so much, she discredits herself so much that the BJP is free to come in and dismiss her government. Or she somehow sort of crawls to the finishing line, and in the next election, she's definitely going to get defeated. Okay, now comes the Karnataka election, which is much more interesting in a political sense. This was interesting in the sense of violence and mass murder kind of way. It was like really stabby, but but Karnataka is I don't know. It's like a Dave Chappelle skit. It's weird, right? And it is so funny. And now Ramon has been investigating electoral fraud, all bunch of things. He will find this hilarious. In Karnataka, the majority mark for the legislative assembly election was 113. BJP got 104 seats. They got elected in 100. So it was a hung assembly. The Congress got 68. Then there was this another party, which is a left party again, left-leaning party. They got 38. So what Congress and this other left-leaning party did was they got together and they formed the government. They got some 117 seats in total. 78 and 38, or something like that. So Congress and they formed the government. What happened was, after the election results were declared, what the Congress and the JDS did was, they took all their MLAs and they shoved them into the neighboring states. They sent them away to the neighboring states. Why? Because they were afraid BJP would buy their MLAs. Because their MLAs are really corrupt and it's so easy to buy them. Right? You just offer them a little bit of money and some cabinet posts, and they will just say, "Okay, we'll leave the party." So what happened was, okay, 117 seats, the opposition in total in the post-poll alliance, what it was figured out, and and the BJP was trying very hard to just lure away people. So what Congress did was, JDS did was, Congress and JDS, they hired charter flights to go to the neighboring states to sort of shut their MLAs into resorts or hotels or whatever, to keep them away from the BJP. Because if they had stayed in Karnataka, BJP would have bought the whole lot of them that very night. It was that kind of a situation, and they would have defected. So, which is imagine what kind of a political culture the opposition has. It's so pathetic, right? The fact is, after that, when the government found out, the central government found out that the charter flights had been hired, the Director General of Civil Aviation, the aerospace, the airline ministry, right, the ones in charge of like all the air traffic and all that, they said these charter flights do not get permission to fly, so they cancelled the charter flights. The hilarious part was all these MLAs of the opposition, they had to go to the neighboring state by buses, right? Had they given the central government more time, they would have cancelled the buses also. They would have had to go walking to the neighboring states. It was that kind of, they were under that kind of duress. So, and simultaneously what the BJP did was they announced their chief ministerial candidate. Chief ministerial candidate was announced, and then the governor, the leaders of the opposition parties, they went to the governor saying, "Listen, we have the majority. Why didn't you ask us to form the government? You should have invited us to form the government. We have the majority. Why did you inform the BJP?" Now the fact is that the governor is a 40-year-old BJP. He served the BJP as a politician as a member of parliament and then in the Gujarat assembly for 40 years. He was a junior of Narendra Modi, the current prime minister, Vajubhai Wala. So this governor listened to them. Then they said that you must immediately cancel set aside the claim made by the BJP, and you must invite us to form the government. Okay, so the governor said, okay, I will consult some legal experts and I will get back to you. Right? The governor. This is at 6 o'clock in the evening. 1 hour later, the governor makes an announcement saying, governor makes an announcement saying, the BJP, I give the BJP 2 weeks to form the government. By saying that the BJP has 2 weeks to form the government, what is the governor saying? That the BJP, I give you 2 weeks to buy all the MLAs you need. That's basically what the governor is saying, right? So now the fact is, now here comes in the interesting bit: electoral bonds, right? Now the Congress does and the JDS have no sources of income. No sources of income because the money laundering routes are closed to them. Demonetization, black money is gone, right? And all these things are just squeezing the purse of the opposition. They have no donors coming in. Nobody wants to join their cadre. Nobody wants to join their parties. They're getting no new leaders. It's a mess. They're basically dying out. And because everybody wants to be in with the BJP. And then the BJP puts a master stroke saying that we will take corruption out of politics by putting in electoral bonds. Now, Karnataka is the last state which the Congress has. Mizoram, they have in the northeast, very tiny state, tiny population, it's not a money maker. Punjab does not. Punjab is also ruled by the Congress, but it is more to do with the Chief Minister Amrinder Singh, who himself says he doesn't have much to do with the Congress, even though he's part of the Congress. And the Congress leadership has no sway over Amrinder Singh. So so Amrinder Singh cannot be influenced by the Congress, and he doesn't send any money to the Congress either. So Congress cannot make money in Punjab. Karnataka was the last cash cow. And that also went with this election. The mandate came against them. Even though it was a hung assembly, BJP got very close, right? And with the fact that the opposition made a post-poll alliance, that pissed off the people even more. The polls showed tanking ratings, right? Now the situation is that the opposition has formed the government, because what ended up happening was high drama. On the day on the day of the floor test, which is like where you have to prove your majority, what ended up happening was the BJP candidate, hello Kitty. So
I know.
yeah, damn cute. What's your name? Him or her?
Oh, that's Luna.
Oh, nice. So
Do the
we got a
Dr.
new
Evil
audience.
finger pose.
What's
Yeah,
that?
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Dr. Evil. Yeah. Sharks with freaking lasers.
There we go. Yeah, there we go. We got the Dr. Evil pose right now.
$1 million. Oh. Okay, so yeah.
$1
Anyway.
million.
$100 billion.
So anyway, yeah. So the Karnataka is the last cash cow, and with this post-poll alliance, which is like an alliance between snake and mongoose, because their vote bank is the same, right? These guys appeal to the same vote bank, right? And in the election, they fought bitterly against each other. They're like bitter enemies, and now they're forming a post-poll alliance just to form the government, just to grab power. At least that's the narrative that went out, right? BJP had great success with that narrative that the opposition is just trying to grab power. Now, the fact is, now that the government has been formed by the opposition, they are not sure that this government will last, because BJP said, no, next year is the general election. Before that, this government will get dissolved. We will form the government. BJP has openly said this, right? Like, remember, like when we spoke about Bihar, what happened in Bihar? They formed this grand alliance of several parties, right? What the BJP did was, one of the guys they kept abusing and kept stamping him as corrupt, and then convicted him and sent him to jail. And it was a legitimate thing, because that guy is super corrupt, super corrupt. He has embezzled hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, and it came out, and he has been given a 20-year life sentence, right? Without any possibility of parole. And he's 76 years old, so I don't think he's coming out of jail alive. So, and then they formed the government with his alliance partner. They have done the exact same thing. They have abused the Congress, calling them corrupt, but Congress's alliance partner with whom Congress have formed the government, they have not said a word against it. Not a single word. They have in fact extended congratulations to him, saying, oh, congratulations on becoming chief minister. Right? But the Congress, even though they had 78 seats and their partner has only 38 seats, they said, we will give you unconditional support, let us form the government. Because the JDS was not agreeing to form the government. So Congress had to say, we will give you unconditional support. Unconditional support means no power sharing agreement. Means no portfolios, we want nothing from you, just let's form the government. You can take all the portfolios, you can take all the seats, you can take all the cabinet posts. We don't even want deputy chief minister posts. But then what ended up happening was, so finally they formed the alliance and they formed the government. There is huge rumblings in the JDS and the Congress cadres and amongst the ministers that these are our bitter enemies, and you have just given the government to them. They've got less seats than us. Imagine how humiliating it is that, like, with 78 seats, they're having to give the government and all the cabinet positions to the junior partner, essentially. Right? So now there are huge cracks emerging in the. So this is exactly the Bihar formula all over again. And then with the electoral bonds, there is no possibility of corruption. They have no money in us. Nobody is donating. So these guys, and there was recently an article saying that Congress has shut down many of its offices in various states. Why? Because they have to budget themselves. They don't have the money to run its offices in all states. It's a national party.
So the BJP is really taking away their financial opportunities from them.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, it is alleged that Congress siphoned off anywhere between 10 and 20 trillion dollars, not billion, mind you, $1 trillion in the 10 years it was in government. and plus from before when it was known. So there are huge question marks hanging like a guillotine over the Congress's head right now, and and watch, within 3 months, maybe 6 months, this government might not might just become another BJP government. And what then? BJP has 23 out of 29 states in India.
Damn, man, they're doing everything they can to destroy the Congress Party.
Oh yeah. So now this being the situation, like it's like, yeah. So anybody have any questions? Pinochet had some questions.
Let's see if he had another one real quick. And no, I think that was the only one he had, actually.
She sounds like an Amanda Marcos type of politician. Dude, she's more like name a famous gangster who was like really murdering and raping.
I don't know offhand, actually. I can't think of one. Maybe what's that guy's name? Pablo Escobar?
Yeah, she's a Pablo Escobar because she has a hand in a lot of things. Illegal immigration. She has her hand in electoral fraud, in money laundering, in strategically trying to change the demographics of the place. She has her hand in the temple. She has put her people in charge of the temple board, and where she takes, because Indian temples have a huge amount of them, and it is alleged that she is siphoning out money from them.
Damn, dude, this is unbelievable. I mean, Modi's done such a great job at destroying his political opposition. I think I've said before that I'd like to get a book or something and study his process a lot better, so that way we could apply it a little more here, because we could really use that. I mean, right now we're seeing the new Democratic Party, which is pretty much our socialist party, is starting to rise in the polls. So we need to do everything we can to tear them down before they could even form a government. That and the liberals. I was just going to say that and the liberals have pretty much gone way more to the left. They're a little longer liberal. They're pretty much our socialists. So we have a double whammy right now.
Yeah, Capone. I think Capone, Pinochet says Capone. Yeah, Al Capone. Yeah, but way more murdering than Al Capone. Like Valentine's Day massacre times a billion. Like think that.
Shit, dude, that's pretty fucking intense.
No, but that's the thing. The gangsterization of politics was the norm in the past decades. BJP has come and just changed that culture. There is no more you are doomed if you try and do that gangster type of politics. Like Dinesh D'Souza used to say that Hillary Clinton represents the gangster side of politics in America. Hillary Clinton is not a patch on some of these guys that we have here, that we used to have, right? Because these guys would like buy Hillary Clinton with the right hand seller with their left hand, and Hillary Clinton will not even come to know, because they operate at that kind of level.
Shit, dude.
So yeah, and for decades, what these guys did was steadily changed the constitution through amendments they try to make corruption as legal as possible. So BJP has had to reverse some of those amendments and close some of those loopholes to make this anti-corruption thing legitimate and effective. And they have really put the screws on. Like there is, I doubt. Like see, like for the example, I doubt they will have any money left to fight any more elections in the next year, right? This year you have the Mizoram elections, which is another Congress state, which is around November, December, right? Yeah, if Mizoram goes, that's it. Then that's only Punjab. Punjab belongs to Amrinder Singh, who himself doesn't want to have anything to do with the Congress. So where is Congress? If you don't have, and Karnataka, which is a fragile coalition, if that goes, what money will you have left, right? What electoral bonds will give you only so much? Who wants to give these guys electoral bonds, right? Who wants to give the Congress electoral bonds?
Well, that's what I've noticed too, is that the more and more that you seem to close the loopholes and you make it more difficult for people to to have political money to work with, then actually it seems like the left-wing parties are starting to die because of it. I mean, one thing that right now we have in Canada, we have Bill C-76, which is trying to say that the political parties cannot run, cannot use, it's limiting the amount of money that they can use that have been donated to them. However, it would allow the current Liberal government to campaign on taxpayer dollars. So it's trying to give them a leg up while it's keeping the other parties down right now.
See, but okay, are they using taxpayer dollars? Which is, see, political parties, when they get donations, they are usually tax free, right? Are they tax free in your country?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you use money from political donations, I'll give you an example. What the Congress party did. They're out on bail. They got charged and they're out on bail right now. The current president and the former president of the Congress party, the mother and son duo, right? The Gandhi family. This guy, as I said, this guy's father was prime minister, his grandmother was prime minister, his great grandfather was the first prime minister of India, right? He comes from basically he's the Kennedy, or they're the Kennedys of this place.
I gotcha.
So yeah, but way more corrupt. What they got caught doing was they used the political donation fund. They used at that time how much? I don't know, tens of millions of dollars, right? They opened a separate entity called the Young India Foundation, and through the Young India Foundation, they funneled that money into this newspaper called the National Herald, right? And with few $10-20 million, they bought 90% controlling stake in the National Herald media house. In prima facie, that would seem, yeah, okay, they bought a news publication using, okay, some corruption is there, saying that, okay, they used donation money, which was donated, which is tax-free money, they repurposed it for some illegal. That can be one illegality, right? But the fact is, the illegality gets magnified when you hear that the property and land holdings and infrastructure, which is part of the National Herald Media Company, is valued at nearly $1 billion, right? All the office buildings, all their land, all their printing presses, a whole bunch of things, nearly it's few $100 million. It's close to $1 billion. Paying $10 or $20 million, they bought a defunct media house, a bankrupt media house, worth nearly $1 billion, using tax-free money by illegally repurposing. They got caught doing that, and they're out on bail.
Oh, lovely. I love, Jesus Christ, man. It looks like the corruption just rooted so deep in the Congress party. It's like you'd almost have to completely destroy the party before you could get all the corruption out. Did you, Arjun, sorry, I'm actually going to have to jump off in a little bit. I got a couple things that I'm going to do. I got a couple errands to run as well.
Yeah.
So is there any other information you wanted to present before we jumped off?
No, see, this is going to get more interesting as the coming weeks come. And as far as the Modi thing you were talking about, would you be interested in doing a series on how Modi has sort of his politics?
Yeah, I would be. Again, I want to learn a lot more about what he's done. So yeah, doing something about Modi would be very interesting to me.
So let me call you this weekend and let's plan out something there. Right?
All right.
And as far as final thoughts are concerned, dude, the story speaks for itself, right? The story speaks for itself. Like the kind of comedy that you get here, it's like a Dave Chappelle skit, as I mentioned. Like you can't make this shit up. You can't make this shit up.
I really thought our politics was in a bad place, and our politics was really corrupt right now. But as I can see, it's nothing compared to what you're going in India. Like yours is having political violence, political corruption at every single twist and turn.
Yeah, dude. And another thing is, dude, the fact is, what makes it more difficult to handle is the population, right? The population and the number and the diversity in caste, community, religion, the differences in even physical appearances. There is the diversity in India is so much. Like the way we dress, the way we eat, it changes every 10 miles. You travel through the country every 10 miles. There are nearly 4,000 languages and 20,000 dialects that are spoken in this country. Right? As much as spoken in entire Africa, more than that is spoken in India. So it is so linguistically, culturally, religiously, and physically diverse, and even geographically diverse, this country, that politics becomes, I mean, it's not easy, right? And then you add on corruption, sociological problems, terrorism. Like today, like 4 terrorist attacks have happened in Jammu and Kashmir in the last 24 hours.
Oh, Jesus.
The central police and the army and a bus station and one more place has been attacked. They threw lobbed grenades. 4 terrorist attacks. And then every day you hear of Maoists and all like trying to attack central forces, they ambush and kill so many central forces. Like it's definitely an uphill battle to state it mildly. So yeah, so, see, I would say that our problems are so much worse than yours. What do you have to complain about? Oh, you got a first world. No, I'm not saying that. The problem is just as serious in your country, but in a different way, right? Like India is still a developing country, so the problems will be much more physical. Like in a developed nation, the fact is because your infrastructure needs are met, your education needs are met, all your basic necessities for the people are met, and plus you have a smaller population which is more or less homogeneous. Okay, the fact is the battle becomes ideological, it becomes mental, it becomes more of a cerebral battle, right? And because you won't see the effects, the sociological effects, the disastrous effects of a wrong idea for much after it has come into effect. You didn't see how bad of a deal Trudeau's dad was, Pierre Trudeau was, till much after Trudeau left, right? Pierre
Absolutely.
Trudeau, who is the father of Canadian multiculturalism and Marxism, so to speak, this cultural socialism. He's the father of Canadian cultural socialism. He's the one who popularized it and brought it into Canadian society and made it a mainstay of Canadian politics. If I'm not mistaken, right?
No, you're absolutely right. And he's been a staple of Canadian politics ever since. A lot of people like to point to him and say how great of a leader he was, but they ignore a lot of the outcomes from a lot of his policies.
Yeah, see, these guys, it's like this. These guys wear $10,000 suits, then walk into your house and take a dump on your pillow. It's like that. So you don't know whether to like admire him for his rich personality and his well-tailored suit, or do you want to criticize him for dumping on your pillow, which is actually the major issue. That please don't come into my house and dump on my pillow. Right? I sleep here.
Oh, absolutely.
So, yeah. So they're trying. So this distraction is been trying to do. Oh, look at how pretty his suit is. No, don't pay attention to the deuce on your pillow.
Don't pay attention to the deuce on the pillow. That's a good place to leave it, actually. Don't pay attention to the deuce on your pillow. That's a good. I like that one. That's a good expression. Thanks for joining me, Arjun. It's always great talking to you, man.
Yeah, I'll call you on the weekend.
All right, sounds good. We'll talk soon.
All right, see you, buddy.
Have a good one. Bye.
Yeah, you too. Bye.